I'm asleep. How long is... Remember when you came back? She said, look, she said to me, I think I'm back. Yeah, we were upstairs eating. Good evening, everyone. Would you please join us in a salute to the flag? And then after, would you remain standing for a moment of silence, and I'll announce it at that time. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And if you could remain standing, we have a moment of silence for Ricky Fernandez, who passed away. He's the longtime chairman of the Maplewood Servicemen's Organization and also the Maplewood VFW Post 10120. And his wife is Betty White, who had the dance studio on Springfield Avenue. So if you could just have a moment of silence for Ricky. Thank you. Thank you very much. Oh. Very good point.
We're standing.
Mr. Larrier asked if we could have a moment of silence for Senator Frank Lautenberg, who was a friend to us here and continues. His staff just actually 3 weeks ago met with them to talk about trying to get public service, electric and gas, to be more responsive to some of our towns. So if we could just have a moment of silence for Senator Frank Lautenberg. Thank you. Thank you very much. Pursuant to Section 5, Chapter 231, Public Laws 1975, this is a state for the record that adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to the public by posting and maintaining the annual notice of regular meetings on the bulletin board of the municipal building, by mailing the annual notice of regular meetings for 2013 to the News Record and Star Ledger in December 2012, and by filing said notice in the office of the Township Clerk.
Mr. Brownlee.
Here.
Mrs. Larrier.
Here.
Ms. Leventhal.
Here.
Mr. Ryan. Mayor DeLuca.
Here.
Okay. Whereas Chapter 231, Public Laws 1975, commonly known as the Open Public Meeting Act, requires that all the meetings of the public be open to the public, and whereas Section 7A provides that the governing body has the discretion to permit, prohibit, or regulate the activity participation of the public at any meeting, and where it is the desire of the governing body to comply with the provisions of this act and at the same time conduct its business in an orderly and expeditious manner, now therefore be it resolved by the Township Committee of the Township of Maplewood that it does hereby prohibit, except as set forth in the formal agenda, active participation and deliberation of the governing body by the public, and except as otherwise prescribed by law, does limit the public to the observation of the actions and discussions of the governing body at all of its regular and special meetings.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Brownlee?
Yes.
Mrs. Larrier?
Yes.
Ms. Leventhal?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the June 5th meeting of the Maplewood Township Committee. We're having a meeting on Wednesday night this week because yesterday was Election Day, and we generally either do the meeting the day before or the day after the election. This means that Mr. Ryan is not able to be with us tonight because on Wednesday evening he teaches, part of his responsibility at NJIT. I'm going to run through the agenda this evening and give you information as to where best you might want to speak on certain items. Our first order of business will be the Board of Health meeting. And by the way, we have these written agendas up here at the clerk's desk if you'd like to come up and take a piece of so you can have a copy of it. So we'll have the first will be the Board of Health meeting, and after that we'll have public comment. Now, if you'd like to speak about the post office site or any of the discussion items, the PSE&G site, that would be the time to do public comment. That would be the time to speak then. We ask you to come up and give us your name and address and share your views with us. After the public comment period, we have an ordinance on final passage, and that is an ordinance that changes the fees for ambulances. It increases the fees from $600 to $800. That gets passed on to insurance companies, and we don't charge the individuals. If you'd like to speak about that ordinance, it's a required public hearing because it's on final passage, then I'll ask if anyone wants to speak on that in particular, and again, you come up and give us your name and your address. We're going to go to discussion items. We are not going to be discussing item number 1. You still can talk about it, but we will not be discussing item number 1, and that's the area in need of rehabilitation at the PSE&G site. That's been pulled from discussion. We are going to talk about the redevelopment plan for the post office. We're going to talk about changes to the massage ordinance, but that is going to be done in the Board of Health. So that will not be at that time. And if you have any comments about that, there'll be a time in the Board of Health when you'd like to, when we invite you up to speak. We will deal with item number 4, which is Communications Committee recommendation for Civic Plus Citizen, Go Citizen Pro, and also the communications recommendation to participate in a community video. We then have another item for discussion, that's the Women's Club. And again, if you have anything you'd like to share with us about the Women's Club, we would ask you to come up during the first public comment period. We then have the consent agenda, and the consent agenda has some contracts that have been completed and will be closing. We have a couple of bills and claim resolutions, budget resolutions for a Clean Communities grant we got. We'll be approving the alcoholic beverage control license, both consumption and distribution. We'll be appointing an attorney for the Historic Preservation Commission, and also approving an estimated tax bill, approving the sending of an estimated tax bill. We have some block party approvals, and then we have minutes of meetings on May 21st. Now, I know there's a lot of discussion about the redevelopment of the post office site, so we're going to do something a little special with the agreement of my colleagues here. If you'd like to say anything now about that, we'd ask you to come up during public comment. Once we have that conversation, we're going to be talking about the ins and outs of that ordinance, of that plan. We will open up again public comment right after that if you would like to make any comments at that time. So you'll have another chance, and it'll be closer to that time if you'd like to make any comments after hearing our conversation. So let's see how that goes, and we will move it. The only other thing I wanted to say about that item is we do expect our planner to come. He is the West Orange Planning Board. We will start the conversation. We will talk about the 2 communication committees reports and the Women's Club, and then we'll go back and talk about the redevelopment plan. So that's going to be shifted to the bottom of the discussion agenda. Okay. Right, and we're pulling item number 11113, which is the resolution for Greigel. That's the rehab study, right? Yeah, we're pulling that one. Okay, so with that, let's move into the monthly Board of Health meeting.
Pursuant to Section 5, Chapter 231, Public Law 1975, this is to state for the record that adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to the public by posting and maintaining the annual notice of regular meetings on the bulletin board of the municipal building, by mailing the annual notice of regular meetings for 2013 to the News Record and Star Ledger in December 2012, and by filing said notice in the office of the Township Clerk.
Mr. Brownlee?
Here.
Mayor DeLuca?
Here.
Ms. Leventhal?
Here.
Mrs. Laria?
Here.
Okay, whereas Chapter 231, Public Laws, commonly known as the Open Public Meeting Act, requires that all the meetings of the public body be open to the public, whereas Section 7A provides that the Maplewood Board of Health has the discretion to permit, prohibit, or regulate the active participation of the public at any meeting, whereas it is desired of the Maplewood Board of Health to comply with the provisions of this act and at the same time to conduct its business in an orderly and expeditious manner, now therefore be resolved by the Board of Health of the Township of Maplewood that it does hereby prohibit, except as set forth in the formal agenda, active participation and deliberation of the Board of Health by the public, and except as otherwise prescribed by law, does limit the public to observation of the actions and discussions of the Board of Health at all of its regular meetings.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Brownlee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes.
Ms. Leventhal?
Yes.
Mrs. Laria?
Yes. Welcome to the June Board of Health meeting. Our agenda is as such that we will have the approval of our minutes. Then we will hear from our health officer, Mr. Rowe, after which, as Mayor DeLuca suggested, we will have the discussion regarding the revision of the massage ordinance. Then we will have a public comment section. Everyone received the minutes from May?
I move them.
Second.
Mr. Brownlee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes.
Ms. Leventhal?
Yes.
Mrs. Laria?
Yes. Mr. Rowe, can you come up and render us your report, please?
As a follow-up to some of the items we discussed last month, just wanted to note I sent a letter to New Jersey Transit notifying them that they need to clean up the ditch that's along the tracks near the Pathmark shopping lot, so I'll be following up on that. I did a narrative report where I did comparisons of different towns with their fees and their licensing times. We were discussing that. And just to let you know, I posted information about mosquitoes and preventing breeding on several websites, and I've talked with lots of people. I've done lots of inspections. In the next few days, I'll be sending out notices to the different tire companies that store tires and different construction companies that may have construction debris at their, workshops that might have stagnant water. And I'll be doing inspections also.
Ms. Leventhal?
Specifically on this, would you continue to check the two large tires that are stored by the Board of Education on Underhill Field near
at Underhill?
the Clinton School parking lot?
Okay. I seem to recall I did that last summer, and they either had holes in them, they didn't have stagnant water in them, but I can check them
If you
again.
would check again this year, I'd
Yeah.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. And then just one kind of new item that's actually a fairly breaking item. Yesterday, with Ms. Leventhal, who's the chairman of our Maplewood Loves Wellness program, we met with a representative from Overlook and their community health program, and he called us, he came to see us, and they have a outreach community health program that's very similar to what we've been planning, and their goals are very similar to ours. So we're going to look to work with them. We may have them sponsor a special walking program and also help maybe sponsor our Maplewood Loves Wellness Day fair, the fair, and the week. So we'll be talking with them again in hopefully the next couple of weeks about that. And I'll advise if we make progress on that. So thank you for Ms. Leventhal for leading us in that direction. It's been terrific, and we're getting some good progress.
Overlook is very appreciative of the relationship they have with you and our nurses, so I can see why they came to us.
Right. So that's my report.
Any other questions? Mr. DeLuca, Mayor DeLuca?
Where are we with the updated planning for Winchester Gardens in the event of another storm?
I don't know if I'm the best person to speak on that. I haven't met with them.
At this point, we have looked at their emergency plan. It was sent to both our chiefs, Semino and Dinglestead, and at this point, they are in the process of, I believe, trying to get a grant for some of the upgrades that they need to have.
Winchester Gardens is trying to get the grant.
That was my understanding.
Winchester Gardens, through the township, has applied for a grant to get an emergency generator, which would, a large capacity, like a $2.2 million generator. I'm not sure, we've also applied to offset our costs too, so, we're waiting to hear about that. Both chiefs did review their plans, their emergency plans. They made several recommendations, but they were just minor. They were more cosmetic or procedural. So they have a plan in place. They have implemented an outdoor kitchen, which is a propane-run type of event because they have electric in their kitchen. So they will be able to provide meals. Their plan says very clearly, what is to be provided, when it's to be provided, et cetera. In the case of the extended period of time that we were out for Sandy, they didn't have emergency generators. Right. Had they had emergency generators, 90% of their issues would not have arisen. So they're applying for one. I'm not sure they're going to get $2.2 million, but
There's a state law, I think, that's excluding. You know about this? There's some kind of
exemption
thing going through to exempt. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, I'm somewhat familiar with that. Yeah.
Well, this is what I heard, is that their association is lobbying to get a law passed that exempts these facilities from emergency generators, I guess, because of the cost.
Right.
Could you check on that more, because I don't think that's necessarily in the interest of the residents there.
Well, you want me to check to see if
there's what this law says.
All right, if they're right, all right.
Yeah.
I will do that, and we can also take a position, contrary to that, and let people know.
I will point out that I did reach out to them to meet and try and just kind of tie up some loose ends, and they were not.
Well, you mean the management?
Yes.
Right. Okay. I'm shocked. I'm surprised.
Let's push a little harder and close the loop with them, because we left them last time when we met with management and tenants or residents. We agreed that we would come back after looking at that and make some recommendations, and so we ought to.
Well, they didn't say we don't want to meet at all. What they said was, it's a little premature. There's some things they want to put in place.
Well, we just entered hurricane season,
Yes.
so.
And, okay, certainly. Ms. Leventhal.
Thank you. I have two things. One, management there is going to be changing, from what I understand.
I didn't hear that.
Yeah.
Their
I don't know
Where?
when. There's a retirement coming up.
Oh.
So, and then that's just informational. The other is a question in our work with them. Are we ensuring that there's statements in their plans where they link to us informationally and anything else? I don't want them off on their own little island, and then all of a sudden, as did happen this year, we find out they have needs that then drain our resources to the rest of our community. I mean, not that that happened, but all of a sudden our firefighters have to be there overnight. I'd like to be sure that they are, they're reaching out to our OEM and letting us know what's happening there, whether it's going smoothly, whether they have needs, that we're able to go visit if we want, that kind of.
Well, yes, and I think what we need to do is when Ms. Larry and I will press for a meeting with them, and we'll bring up there. I know they have in their plans connections to the police in terms of, and the fire. It's mostly revolving around emergencies and evacuations and things like that. But you're talking more on a level that's higher that isn't, yes. So I'll note it for our meeting agenda.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Thank you. You might want to stay up there. At this point, we're going to have a discussion about the revision of the massage ordinance. I know that, my understanding is that we've gone from, the township licensing, the businesses and the individuals, the therapists, to now the state will license the individuals, so we only have to do the businesses, and there's some ordinance updates that we need to make, and I think between Mr. Desiderio and Mr. Rowe, maybe you can fill us in.
Sure. Well, this came to light because we were taking an enforcement action against one business, and as part of our preparation for the enforcement action, we found that last September new state regulations had taken effect, unbeknownst to us, concerning licensing of massage therapists. And so because of those new regulations, we need to revise our own ordinance to fit in so we're not preempted in some ways. And I think Mr. Desiderio studied the matter and has made recommendations for changing our ordinance. So
Mr.
maybe
Rowe.
he could outline them better than I could.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree. I did speak to the Deputy Attorney General who handles this for that particular board, and their licensing is with regard to the actual massage therapist. So what we did was we went through the ordinance, and I apologize for reasons I cannot explain. It is not in the code book. We will make sure it gets into the code book. So this is the ordinance itself. And what we basically did was went through and took out the references specifically with the permitting aspect for the individual, not necessarily for the massage business. And that's what we did, and that's what goes what this goes to. So we have that, and the only other change we made based on Mr. Rowe, my discussion with Mr. Rowe, and what has been the general approach on ordinances was to make offense fines specific as opposed to making them general. So in what is now paragraph 23, we make the first offense $200, second offense $400, and any subsequent not in excess of $2,000, which is the maximum, so that if there's going to in fact be an offense, there's an ability to plead to that offense without a necessity of a court appearance. Otherwise, that's pretty much it. It's the basic ordinance that was passed, that was I think the subject of a great deal of discussion and input before it was ultimately drafted, and the changes are really those that I think would make it consistent with the present state law.
Any questions? Mr. Rowe, you sent around a notice that you were planning to send to all of the businesses. Now, was that sent, or is that to be sent this month?
That will be sent. Normally, I've been doing that in May. I just wanted to get the sense of the board tonight as to whether they were generally in favor of the changes we're talking about before I pursued that. I didn't know what the board maybe didn't want to, maybe they wanted to repeal the whole ordinance. I doubt you want to do that, but you know, I just wanted to get the sense of, from the discussion tonight, whether we were going to generally go along with the amendments as recommended by Mr. Desiderio. And if that's seems to be the consensus of the board, I will send out applications to businesses for massage business permits.
With the proviso that in order for us to license them, they have to show proof
Yes.
that their individual therapists are licensed according to state law. Is that it?
That's correct. They'll have to show that the people on staff are properly licensed, and also the state, as part of the state regulation, they require the businesses to be registered. There's a difference between licensing and registering, and I think licensing somewhat preempts us from licensing, if I'm correct, but registering doesn't preempt us from permitting. So we can still issue permits to businesses and do all the inspections that we currently have with all the different departments.
Ms. Leventhal?
Do we need to have this introduced and finalized before?
No.
No, okay.
No, because I think what Mr. Rowe's saying is he just wanted to make sure that you were generally, that you didn't want to take some action that might be more drastic in terms of repealing it. But if you want to go forward, the old ordinance will remain in effect, okay, until the new ordinance is passed. So, you know, what I would suggest is that if in fact you are going to direct me to put this on for introduction at the next meeting, Mr. Rowe can go forward and send his notices. We'll put this on for the June 18 meeting, and then a July 2 final. And in the meantime, he'll have the notices out.
But the notices won't address, they will not do the licensure of the
It will only-
practitioners?
right.
Okay.
It
With the-
I've already sent out a kind of an advisory
Oh,
notice to all the
that's right. I'm
businesses.
sorry. Yes.
And
Yes.
more than a few contacted me, indicated they already were
Yes.
aware of the state regulations and they had already gotten the appropriate licenses. So that's good to hear. Those are the really professional businesses that have done that.
So,
Any other questions?
am I so directed?
Yes.
Yes, please.
So essentially, it's going to be this
Yeah.
same thing.
Yes.
We'll have to make another
Without
copy.
the red,
We
without
don't
all
have
the
to,
red.
we don't have to make another copy, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Rowe. At this point, we come to the point in the Board of Health meeting where the public can come and address the board. Is there anyone here who would like to address the Board of Health? Being no one, I will ask for us to move to be adjourned.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Brownlee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes.
Ms. Leventhal?
Yes.
Mrs. Laria?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, we're back on the regular agenda, and that's item number 5, and that is public comment. If you'd like to speak about any of the discussion items that are listed here, that's the redevelopment plan for the post office, changes to the, well, we just did change the massage ordinance, forget that. Communications committee, the women's club, or anything else, now would be the time to come up, give us your name and address, and share your views with us.
Hi, Miriam Stella, 140 Franklin. I'm going to jump ahead of everybody because I'm not here for the Women's Club. I'm here about the Bergdorf Cultural Center. I am one of the many residents who rents out the community room. I'm sorry Mr. Ryan's not here because I know his group uses it quite frequently. I have asked repeatedly, both of the Recreation Department, Keith, I believe his name is,
yes.
and then Andy, before he resigned, to try to get 2 big window air conditioners in the community room so that we can continue using the space throughout the summer months. I am a dance instructor. I rent out the space. It is impossible to be there in July and August because we have no air conditioning. And I have offered to take my my rental fee, to have my husband purchase the air conditioners, put them in. So I've got nowhere with the Recreation Department. So I thought this is the place to come. I was told that there were initial plans to have the entire building have central air. Keith bought me some fans last year, but you know, 92 degrees in July isn't going to cut it. So I'm here to ask if that is a possibility, because I'd like to continue using the space.
We don't know if the electric system will allow that to happen. We're going to ask Mr. Manning to check it out. Mr. Manning's a township engineer, and Keith works for Mr. Manning. So,
Township Administrator.
what did I say, engineer? Township administrator, I'm sorry. I just gave you a promotion, or certification, not a promotion, a certification that you don't deserve, yes. But Mr. Manning will check it out, and if there's some kind of cost share, we can talk about that. But I think the bigger issue will be whether the electric will handle it. I don't know what the electric system, because you probably need a fairly large, as you say, a large one might need a 220 line as opposed to a regular one. And I don't know if we even have that capacity over there. But we're only guessing right now, so why don't we have Mr. Manning check it. If you can get your information,
Okay.
and then he'll be the person, he'll be your point of contact to
Fabulous.
work that out. And it is a problem there, we know. It is that's why we move these meetings over to the police station, because it gets oppressive in here.
I mean, it's a great space and it's utilized by so many people, but it's not, you talk about the health thing, and especially with the hurricane, if you're gonna use it as a shelter, you're all gonna be sweltering in there. So anyway, I'll keep in touch with him.
All right.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else want to address the Township Committee?
Hi, my name is Judy Lewis, and I'm at 72 Oakview Avenue in Maplewood. I wanted to talk about the post office, and it's a very specific issue. I know you have many issues, and I know it's complicated. I'm concerned about the aesthetics of it, and I don't know if this is the right time to mention it, but this is a great opportunity. This town is so beautiful. To get somebody other than a developer to make the decision for a town. And that concerns me because of the building the new building next to the fire department. It's quite ordinary, and I think, serviceable, but this position of the post office is very important to the town. I think the way the town is laid out, this is very important to have it done properly, and that's an architect, not a developer, deciding, and the town deciding and telling them what we want it to look like. Because of the drop in the property, there's an issue with massing. You have to do it properly, and that's my big concern. I know you have many other, you have to get people, and I think it's a great project, but I'm very concerned because everyone loves this town because it feels a certain way, and I'm afraid if you let a developer make the decision, you're going to lose control of what has been beautifully planned in the past. And that's...
Have you had a chance to look at the draft plan?
I have. I actually watched the last meeting online. They posted it on Maplewood Online, so I watched it. But I've lived here a long time, and I love the way, and I think everybody loves the way the village feels, and the walkability, and the people love to be down there if you look on a weekend or at night. And that's an architectural issue, because architecture is really important. I know developers are important, but they're not always, they're a little ham-fisted sometimes, buildings. So that's my comment.
Let me just, and maybe for the benefit of everybody, and you might know this, but let me just run through how the process works under the State Redevelopment Act. We have to redevelop. First of all, we had to find the area in need of rehabilitation, which we did. That was done last year. And then you have to develop a rehabilitation plan or a redevelopment plan, which we're in the process of now. We've held 3 community meetings. The one you saw on Maplewood Online was a community meeting, not one of these meetings, where we've had 3 meetings at the Bergdorf Center for the Performing Arts. 2 there, and then we had 1 here. And we got ideas. We kicked around ideas, what people liked, what they didn't like, things like that, and then the planner came back and forth. So then the planner's responsible to draft the plan, comes to us. We then introduce it as an ordinance and send it to the planning board. Planning board has a meeting, goes through it, makes recommendations, and sends it back to us. Now, what we did in this instance is we sent it to the planning board without introducing it. This is with the post office.
Okay.
So we've taken a look at the draft plan. We've sent it to the planning board. We've met with the Village Alliance. We've gotten their comments back. The planning board has had a meeting. They had a meeting on the 20th. They had 2 meetings in May, one on the second Tuesday and one on the 28th. They've given us some comments, which we're going to be talking about tonight. As I said, the Village Alliance, we've made some more changes. A lot of these have to do with massing, scaling, appropriate size, the look. So the product that will come out tonight, we're going to have a work session tonight. The product that will come out tonight will be another draft, which we will send to the planning board for their review on Oh, I'm sorry. Then the product we have tonight will be put into an ordinance form and then introduced on June 18th by this Township Committee, then sent to the Planning Board. The Planning Board will meet on July 9th, review it, have another public comment interaction, and then it will come back to the Township Committee on July 16th, and then we'll have a public hearing, required public hearing, and then we'll either vote it, amend it, whatever. At that point, we then put out requests for qualifications or requests for letters of interest from developers. And that will list, that will have the plan, and the plan is really a zoning document, what's allowed, what's not allowed, things like that. And a lot of it talks about the culture and the architect of Maplewood Village and the walkability, all the things you were talking about. Then we'll have a due date when all those proposals come back. And those proposals will list the criteria for the developer, what they've built in other places, why we think they're the ones that should be selected, and it will also have some kind of draft of what they want to put there. Then the Township Committee will meet with them, and then we will select a developer, which we call the preferred developer. Then that person then has to prepare a site plan and go to the Planning Board, and the Planning Board will use the zoning document, which is the redevelopment plan, to say either you met the zoning document or not, and they'll do give and take back and forth and create that. So there's public input through that whole process. So there's the developer will not, this body here will make the decision on who the developer is. The developer just doesn't come forward. Okay.
Does he control the look, is what I'm saying?
No, the look is, well, there is the zoning. So for example, if you say you have to build a one-family house and it can only be so high and so it has to be off the sides and all that kind of stuff. Now, if someone has a window here as opposed to there, that's the person who's building it. But the windows have to be a certain size and they have to be different. The bottom windows have to be different from the top windows. In this instance, the storefront can't be more than 30 feet, so it has to look like there's a storefront every 30 feet.
So this will be the planning people who make these choices, and those people have...
They have to follow them.
They
have to follow them. The developer has to follow the planning.
And the plan is made by...
The plan is made by the
that-
planner, and then we approve it, and the planning board reviews
And they have
it.
an architect working on it, obviously?
The planning board has, there is no architect on the planning board. There's designers, there's engineers, and there is, on the board of the Village Alliance, which has given us input, there are some architects there who have looked at it, yes.
Okay, thank you very much. It's been concerning me because it's a prominent...
It's a concern of us all. I mean, this
Yeah.
is the most important piece of property in
And
town.
it's an odd property with the slope. That's got to be addressed as making it not too massive and you know, that type of thing. But thank you very much.
Okay. Anyone else?
My name is Ruth Ross. I usually use my middle initial E since there are several others with my name, including someone who writes for the papers. I live at 169 Maplewood Avenue. That's right in the village. I've lived in Maplewood for 30 years plus, including in the village, which means I see the traffic, both the pedestrian traffic and the vehicular traffic that go on in the village. I've been quite opposed to the moving of the post office, and even more so when or if the plans to replace it are going to be with another residence. And I will have to be a little somewhat defensive by saying, since I've only just recently retired, I really can't say that I have been well apprised of or having kept myself aware of the, all the details and the history of this. But from what I have read and come to know, I really am opposed. I think from the point of view of another residents in the village, and, you know, obviously the moving of the post office. The villages and driving through in and around the village and walking in and around the village 30 years so, it's gotten more difficult. It is crowded and difficult, and parking is a problem. And even, you know, pedestrian traffic is difficult. And I really feel that this change, this plan will put us all in a very uncomfortable position. That's...
Thank you. Anyone else want to address the Township Committee?
Hi, I'm Victor Gallo. I live at 121 Maplewood Avenue. I guess I just wanted to amplify the comments of the first speaker about the aesthetics of the redeveloped post office site. I think we need to look at the lessons that we could learn from the redevelopment of the police site. And what I'm concerned about is the facade structure of the police site. While the bricks look good, there are certain very cheapening elements on the facade there, like plastic exhaust fans. There's probably 100 plastic exhaust fans on the facade of that building that just cheapens the whole building, and the windows look like they're vinyl windows. I'm not sure whether they are or not. So I guess in terms of opportunities for the town to address this, since they own the site and since they have a lot of control over what the site is going to look like, I think that what the planning document may need to do and could be revised to do is to provide some detailed specifications for windows and for the facade materials, so that when this plan goes out for an RFQ or an RFI, that the developers can submit something and factor into their cost for the project what the township would like to see in terms of a facade for this building. That's it.
I'm just looking because I do believe
I didn't think it was detailed enough. I did look at the plan, and I just thought it could actually be more of a specification about wood windows or whatever an architect.
I thought we took out the vinyl. I think we made clear there's no vinyl windows. And also, okay, I just want to make sure you saw the last one, because there was one, and then we made some changes to it. But there is.
And I don't know if there's something about that would address the exhaust fan issue.
Yeah, that's it. I don't know if we've done that. You're talking about like the ones over a stove?
I don't know where there are. I don't know.
You're talking about
what their
the stack.
function
You're not
is.
talking about the stack pipes. You're talking about.
I'm talking about is they're on the face of the building, and they're probably a
yeah. So they're
12,
either
a foot
yeah.
square.
You know what they are? They are. Each unit has a heater. Each unit is a self-contained hot water heater, and it's a vent for the gas. I remember that when they made the presentation, but we can certainly, that's what the exhaust, it's the exhaust
Yeah.
of the heater. So we can ask the planner if he has recommendations for that.
Excuse me, Mayor,
Yes.
like on page 18, addresses the vinyl.
Oh, building materials, right. And we say building materials shall harmonize with materials used in surrounding development, brick, stone, stucco. Okay. I think we have it covered, and we're going to add some more stuff in definitions from the Maplewood Village Alliance guidelines, design guidelines, that allow a little more specificity on materials.
Okay, and maybe prohibitions on materials like.
Well, we'll
I
ask
understand you
this.
have the vinyl. I understand you
Yeah.
have the vinyl.
I mean, I'm not sure how you do the heater exhaust, because you can't duck it. That would look even worse. But there may be ways you can make it look less like you're
Plastic.
suggesting. Yeah.
Maybe less plastic.
Just a question, not looking at the document as you're on it. When it says harmonize, is harmonize an aesthetic thing, or is it also a material use, type of material used thing as well?
Well, there's like 4 or 5 sentences before it that say things you can and cannot use. And then it says at the end, harmonize with the other. And these are all things that you find in other buildings there. So you don't find a lot of synthetic stucco there or vinyl siding in the other one. So by defining what can and can't be used and saying harmony, I think it wraps together.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else who wants to address the Township Committee?
Evening. Kirk Hiley, 506 Summit Avenue. Just have a couple questions about the Women's Club meeting. I commend you on the little page on the website that has all the information for the meeting. That's a great step. It would be great if we had like that for all the major projects that are going on in town, so we could just find all the information all in one spot. Also, the meeting's at 4 o'clock. It's going to be difficult for many people that have a 9-to-5er to get there.
It's
And also,
4 to 8. It's 4 p.m. to 8 p.m.
Right. My next question was, what's the structure of the meeting going to be? Or things might be duplicated. People are coming in later at the meeting, and maybe you'll just get to that when you discuss it later.
Why don't you explain it now?
Okay. Think of an open house environment. We will have materials that are on the website available, like the drawings, the listing of what the task force has come up with as possible uses, and asking people to rate their preferences and give new ideas. The whole intent of this is not a meeting atmosphere.
So it's more like a social
Drop-in, kind of open house, drop-in environment. And it's to specifically learn what uses people are looking for as priorities and what we may have missed. As I've said a few times, I was very struck when Studio B spoke about what they had done. This wasn't in my consciousness, so to speak, and to see that there may be other ideas is a very creative community in that respect. And the engineer will be there, some of us will be there. We'll have a dialogue with individuals or a small group, but it's not going to be a meeting presentation. So and we did extend it in an extra hour with the understanding of people coming home. 8 o'clock, so we made it 8 o'clock.
All right, great. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wants to address the Township Committee?
Dave Helmkamp, 571 Prospect. I wanted to talk to you tonight on behalf of an organization that formed this week that has talked a lot about the post office project, but has also talked more widely. It's been named, self-named, Engage Maplewood, at a website, engagemaplewood.org. I'd like to tell you a little bit about what people are thinking, and then tell you about the petition that you're aware of that we had started, which is specifically related to the post office. To do that, I'm going to take a few minutes to say what we seek to be, then a few more minutes to talk about what we've done in the last 6 days, as this all started last Thursday, and then finish up with the petition and tell you what the preliminary results of that is. This is really what I'll call a birthing process right now. I intend to speak only of this initiative. If I should begin to sound a little bit too much like myself, you should please stop me, because we're really looking at this as a separate activity from any of the current issues before the township, the post office, the women's club, or whatever. Even John Harvey hasn't said the word woman or club in the last 6 or 7 days, and I think that was a virtuoso performance. So I'm going to stick to that. The point is, I just want to be as clear as possible about the hopes of the group. We wrote up a little bit of a blurb and about on the website, and I'm just going to hit on a few of the words that's in that to sort of just give you a sense as to the sentiment behind the activity. We had a notion of wanting a common sense of cause, and here's where I'm going to interpret a little bit, because the people that did come to our first meeting, there was only one meeting, so none of this has been validated with those people. But our sense of what that meant was just a notion that many of the issues that the town is facing at any given time, that there's just, in the dialogue, in the community, there's just a more widespread common sense as to why the issue is being addressed. We had a notion of vibrancy in that statement, and the notion there is that whatever dialogue is occurring, that there's a good buzz about it, that there's a lot of shared ideas in the dialogue, in the community. We had a notion of effectiveness, and I would emphasize there that there's a sense that the information is being available to the public, that they're digesting it, that they're using it, that there's a sense of continuity, that if an issue is long-term, that people kind of understand the history of it, or at least can find out the history easily if they choose to join a conversation 3-4 months into the dialogue, and that it's fact-focused. And we all know that doesn't always happen, and there's certainly no one to blame specifically for that. Well, actually, in cases, there are some people to blame specifically, but that's a different issue. We also had the word disjoint in our statement. And the couple of comments that I'll make to sort of illustrate that, the notion that there's a lot of pride in the community in a lot of ways, and we don't see that a parallel in that in terms of civic activities necessarily. And certainly there's tremendous amount of civic contribution in the community. That's not the issue, but so much as that it doesn't seem, on a community-wide basis, in line with that sense of pride that is so widespread. Another aspect of jointness is that chatter that's typically on Maplewood Online, which unfortunately gets into the real world too much. And, there's discussion that people just wishes there'd be more of a way to squash some of that with a broader knowledge of facts, as opposed to the chatter. You can't stop the chatter, you can't stop the rumors, but if you can put the facts out more clearly, and this is not addressed at the effectiveness of the Township Committee as much as how the whole community interacts as well. But another aspect of disjointness is sometimes there's reality that the community doesn't really know what the township is doing. It's kind of an unfortunate disjointness as well. We're going to come back as a group to some of these points and think about what methods or activities might help, and I would imagine that if we have a cohesive story, that we'll be back to describe that as well. The notion is not to head off in any new direction. Clearly, there are lots of things going on in the township that are related to these points. The communications committee you're talking about, the activity that you had, Councilman Brownlee had started with community meetings, certainly, those are all things that we recognize as being in that direction. But, the notion is that and this is more of a math statement than anything else, if 1 in 5 people had a good sense of, for example, the procedures, as you just described to one of the speakers a few minutes ago, if 1 in 5 people in the community understood that procedure, well, in any group of 3, you got a 50% chance that one of those people knows that procedure. And there goes the rumor mill. You can squash the rumor mill if you got 1 guy out of 3 who can speak with some sense of knowledge. And that's sort of where we like to push, is just help make more of that the case. Because 1 in 5 is not, for a community like Maplewood, it's not that, it's not a stratospheric goal, I don't think. So let me just say really briefly what we've done in the last 6 days. Conversation started right after the last Township committee meeting. And I'll say that I personally was perplexed, really, about the participation or lack of apparent participation by merchants, by a lack of discussion in connection, and this is in connection with the post office, a lack of discussion about the economics of that site and what it could and couldn't do, and a lack of conversation about its functionality, how it would interact with the rest of the town, what types of things you might do there. There just was no conversation that I could sense around those points. And through the middle of May, the comments that were discussed at the planning board were really more, as we've heard, aesthetics, massing, a variety of things that didn't touch on those other items. So I just went off and started talking to a few merchants, and 3 or 4 ended up continuing to talk. But what I learned along the way was kind of a repeat of what I had mentioned in my comments, I guess 2 weeks ago. Really isn't, at least if you interact with people randomly in the town, there isn't that good a knowledge of where the plan stands, what might be possible, what the next steps are. You're presented with those very questions tonight by one individual, and they're answered, and I've heard you answer them many times. I'm not here to say you haven't said it enough. But there's a sense of gap there that we're not sure where exactly it comes from. But that's what the organization is about, is that gap. It's not about where the blame might lie, or the reality that a lot of people are either too busy or too disengaged to get involved at this point. It's more about exploring, a root cause analysis. Where are the little things to tweak a little bit and try and improve that. So last Thursday, 40 people showed up. We had a general discussion. John led half of the meeting, talking about just general notions of what motivates you, how you decide what drives you, why you do things. We then opened the conversation a little bit to how that relates to people's activities in civic issues in the town. And then we really used the post office process as an example for discussion. We didn't, clearly there's always discussion about the particulars, and parking issues came up and all those things, but the conversation was really just more about, well, so here's this process, here's what we've done so far in the process, here's what we're planning to do, how many people knew about it, what do you think about it, what do you wish you had known, what would you have done if you'd known, things like that sort. And it was really just an example that was discussed. And what came out of it was really the ideas in that statement, the ideas I went through earlier, which the organizers kind of took a commitment to make that a long-term goal. I should say that differently. Certainly long-term goal, but we made the commitment to come back some short number of weeks, reconvene the people that were interested in reconvening, and start to talk about those particular ideas. But the second thing was this petition that got started, and that was identified as a short-term goal, with the idea that if people are going to participate in the remainder of the process for more than just the purpose of understanding the process, they ought to know before they get to that meeting. If they're coming to the meeting for these discussions, they ought to have pointed questions based on knowledge, not coming to find out, oh, what is it? Probably better for the progress of the meeting as well. So that is the kind of the birth of the petition. That's where it started, and it started Thursday night. There wasn't any other subject matter discussed, in terms of any other activities in the town, any other hot topics, if you will. I made a copy of the tally. There's one sheet there for each of you of the tally of the petition, and then there's the actual physical data, if you will. The latter I need back. I didn't make copies at this point. The text of the petition is, as you see there, at the top of the summary sheet. The synopsis of the results is below it. I personally did some preliminary filtering. I made sure that there weren't any counts in there for people that weren't in Maplewood, that they weren't residents, business owners, or residents or business owners. And the rough tally from the various sources were 32 at that meeting that first night. Various retail locations picked up 86 from Friday to today at noon. And there was one canvassing period in the village for about 3 hours Saturday morning. I'm estimating about 7 person hours. I was there no more than an hour and a half myself. I had to leave town at noon. And then finally 116 were collected online, and those are printed in the first stack, or the first 5 or 6 pages of that stack. So the total came up to 334 and 83 Facebook likes, and I'm too old to explain to you how significant that is. I haven't had a chance to ask my kids. But that's the summary of it. Really, all people had was either that petition as you see it. In a few cases, they had a sheet that provided background of the organization once we were a few days in. I think the interactions on the street were just pretty much a 3-line introduction. The building's coming down, the township owns the land, there's a document that describes it. There's no plan. You know, that was essentially how the person was interacted with, and we're asking the township to describe the document to the public. My personal experience was that my criteria was persons from Maplewood, they're 18 or older, they have no more than 1 child with them, or if they're a grandparent. Any of those criteria, or that last criteria disqualifies you because they're walking down the street with their grandchildren, and that a few times. But if you had less than 1 kid with you, and you're over 18, we stopped and asked, and every person that fit that category that we actually interacted with listened and signed. And in my experience, I should say, in the hour and a half I was actually in the street. Half, 3/4 knew the building was coming down. None of them knew the schedule, deciding on the zoning. So, but, that's the sense of the, again, it's similar to what I've said in comments. I think the purpose of the exercise is really to make the point that having an informed public on such a technical document that's so important to the community would be better for the process. We'll continue to collect some petitions, and we're looking for your support to have some sort of a forum, which we would gladly help to organize so that the last draft of the document can be reviewed.
Questions?
Actually, just to, could you leave your contact information with the assistant clerk over there?
I'm engaged, maplewood.org. I'm just joking.
Okay.
Yes, definitely.
Thank you. And in terms of, you said you were going to gather more petitions. You mentioned going in the village for 3 hours. Springfield Avenue as well?
I only went to a few stores that I frequent up there.
No, I'm encouraging that, I'm saying.
Yes.
Because that's obvious, there's Maplewood is all of Maplewood, not just what's in the village. So.
Absolutely.
Because there's a whole set of people that don't go online and aren't in the village, and there's a whole, it's all of Maplewood, not just.
Agreed 100%.
Okay.
The emphasis, or the impetus maybe is the better word, was the lack of merchant participation up to now.
Right.
And I think that kind of made us a little myopic.
There's a lot of merchants on Springfield Avenue too.
Absolutely, but in terms of their stake in the development of the site directly, that the economic and functional aspect, that really was it. I was at Parkwood, I was at the gym, I was at the coffee shop in Springfield.
Did you work out in the gym?
I put a cup, Unfortunately, I've been too busy.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
I keep walking in, and he thinks I'm going to be going to the gym, and I'm not. What's it called when you know, the sheets with the tag-offs, tear-offs? I can't, there's a term
Cheat
for
with
them.
the tariffs.
I put a couple of those up starting around the voting day, and I kind of withdrew from that just because I felt it was putting the issue out too much in the public. I just felt like putting signs everywhere that said Maplewood's got this debate going on. Whereas in a Maplewood business, it seemed more comfortable, and I just personally don't know that as many businesses on Springfield.
Okay.
But I can definitely do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wants to address the Township Committee?
Good evening, Mayor and Councilman. My name is Norman Scrivener. I'm an store owner in town, and one of the situations that's come to...
I'm sorry. Could you repeat your name and address?
Certainly, Norman Scrivener.
Scrivener, okay. Thank
Scrivener, right. I own the toy shop in town.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
For the few meetings that I've attended, and I apologize for not getting here early this evening, but I had another meeting. But as I'm sure you're aware, you've been proactive in putting out information on patch and various other Maplewood matters and things like that. In the short time that I was surveying people about this through at my store, actually, there's a great number of people who are really not aware of what's going on in town here, and that's because they're not reading all of this information and everything else. And you know, I'm concerned that when this project goes through, and I think it's, you know, definitely something that we're looking forward to doing, that the impact on this is not, the people in town are not aware of the impact of how this is going to affect the town when the construction starts, of how it's going to affect, and I'm not sure anybody really knows, but I mean how it's going to affect the traffic flow. How will people avoid coming to town? Will they, you know, it's just going to be a major situation. And we were talking about the demographics and everything else, and it seems that as Maplewood is a spread out area, it's not going to impact people who live all the way up in Wyoming, perhaps, unless they're coming down for the train station. So I'm not sure how we can get them to come in and actually be aware of what is going to be taking place here. The other thing that I was concerned about, and I think, I'm not sure whether we addressed it before, but if major retailer goes in there, or if specifically King's, if they go into this new area, what is going to happen with their old premises? Has anything been decided on that? Has anybody looked into that as far as what's going to be happening with that space, or are we going to be ending up with a vacant space for you know, a year, 2 years? So it's just that I'm not an architect, I'm not a planner, but I am concerned about some of the things that may happen here. One of the things that we've all addressed over the 20 years that I've been in town here is the parking issue. And from what I've heard, we're actually going to be losing parking spots in this downtown area here. And that seems to be very critical as far as I'm concerned, because I found that my clients want to be parked right outside the store. Why they have to do that, why they can't walk a block, I don't know, but that seems to be the issue. And so I think that's something that, as far as the actual footprint of the building goes, I don't know. And are you aware of, I mean, do you know we don't know the dimensions of it at this point, I guess, right?
The footprint of the building?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, the zoning, we don't know the dimensions of what's being proposed, but we do know that the properties now total, there's 3 properties, and they total 33,000 square feet.
Okay.
And you can only put a building on it 60, well, what is it, 65, 60%? 50%, so a building can only be half of that.
Okay.
So 160,000,
So,
16,000 square feet, say?
So am I under the misconception that we will not be losing parking
No,
spaces?
there are 33 parking spaces that are in that area, but the plan calls for the replacement of any parking spaces lost.
Okay.
As far as the construction, the demolition, you're right. And what we've been talking to the Village Alliance about is ways in which we can mitigate that by doing things that would not have that kind of impact. But, you know, yeah, there's going to be times when they're going to have, you know, they're going to be putting steel there, and they're going to maybe have to close off some other driveways and stuff because they're going to be having cranes and things like that. It's going to be dusty. Those are some realities, but, you know, what we're hoping to do is to get this thing going and up and, you know, and out and done so that we don't have that impact. I mean, part of the reason of the timing with the Women's Club, or now we're calling it 60 Woodland, is so that we have some possibility there of doing some things. So we're talking about staging, maybe using the Maplewood Pool parking lot to do some staging, doing some construction equipment there. You know, there's going to be workers where we're going to park their cars. So those are things that we're talking about. There's ways in which we can maybe work with some private companies, maybe the country club for part of it. We can rent out some space for construction vehicles or the worker vehicles. So those are the things we're going to be thinking about because we absolutely understand. And certainly nothing's going to happen there until after the holidays because we're not going to start in December. So everything will happen after, but yeah, I don't want to say it's not going to be an impact during construction because it is.
I mean, and I think that probably a lot of the people in town don't realize the impact of what's going to happen with that, and I'm not sure how we get that across to them and everything else. But I think that just to digress for 1 second, one of the last meetings I was at, we were talking about the issue of the tunnel going through the
yes.
Okay, and the fact that at night, those spots along the train, by the train station there's very few people that park there. So you have this huge conglomeration of people in the village looking for parking spots,
right.
And you have all that vacant lots. And because the problem there is that to get to those spots, you have to go all the way down to Jefferson, come all the way around again. And it always amazes me how the people that come off the trains at night, they're just like swarms. They have no idea where they're walking. Their blinders are on and they walk in the middle of the road. I mean, invariably, you know, and that's an issue that, you know, going along with the construction, how's that going to affect all the people coming off the trains and everything? So
those are considerations we're going to have to work with New Jersey Transit because for that south tunnel, for example, we have to be careful. There's construction there. We've got to watch people, and you know, you have to create nets, and there we already have requirements in town to put up, like they have in New York City, those when you're doing construction, those barriers, so that when we were doing stuff on Springfield Avenue, we had to put those up. So we have those ordinances and those rules in place. But we're going to have to work that out and figure that out. And maybe, you know, when we work it out with a developer, there'll have to be certain things done at certain times, and they can't be done at certain times. So those would be some of the issues worked out.
I'm just surprised how many lack of people here tonight that, you know, concerned citizens, because when we had this meeting the other day, and as was said, you know, we've got 350 people who seem to be interested in it, and there's no one here.
Well, you know, I spoke to some students at Seth Boyden earlier today, and the principal asked what would be one thing you'd want them to tell them, and I told them, show up. I told them, you know, decisions get made. Somebody's making decisions, and I said, show up, because these were student council. I said, you all showed up, and you all are doing stuff, and I think we do, sometimes we're kind of lonely here because we don't have anybody here, and we just did a budget last meeting, and no one spoke about it, and everybody's upset about taxes. You know, it's a constant struggle to get folks engaged.
You have to take the action to get, you know, we can talk about it all the time. But.
Let me also just talk about the current Kings. And I think you were at some of the early meetings where I explained this, that Kings does not own that building. You know, Kings is an entity, and then there's the owners of Kings, and they have relationships, and one owns the building and one owns the... But Kings has I think they told us, a 20-year lease to that building, or some long-term lease, 15 to 20 years. So they're looking to put something in there that's compatible with their supermarket, not something that's going to compete with their supermarket. They have an interest in making sure that they get something in there. We have an interest in working with them to do that. The difficulty is that while in a redevelopment area, we can be partners with the developer. In that, because it's not in the redevelopment area, it's a little bit harder. We can use some persuasion, things like that, but it's really a planning board site plan approval. Mm-hmm. But we're looking for them not to have that vacant for any period of time, but to get, you know, there may be some period of time when they're moving things, if this all works. I mean, that's the other thing. This all has to work. If they do locate across the street, then there'll be a period of time, I guess, for reconstruction of that and renting that. But once all this starts to go, if they get a lease with the developer, remember, this is not the town creating leases. So we're going to select the developer. The developer is going to start negotiating with Kings for a lease for that facility. Once that gets done, then I think Kings is going to start the process of finding a tenant for their current building.
We've all been talking, or in the meetings we've been talking about Kings going to that as the key store. Once it's sold to the developer, once the developer takes it, does he have the right to bring in somebody else other than Kings? And do we have any saying on who he would bring in?
That is part of the negotiation process, yes. We have in the plan here that Kings is interested in moving. We're going to talk a little bit more about maybe changing some of the language about that. In the request for qualifications or the request for letters of interest, we can put in there that we want to, when they come back to us with a proposal, we want them to have had a conversation with Kings to give us an indication if that's possible or not. So that's a whole nother document that gets written after this gets done. And so we will be there's no way that we could have two supermarkets in town. There's just no way.
No way, yeah.
And so, and if it doesn't work with Kings and they decide not to move, then the plan is adaptive enough to just have small storefronts as opposed to one tenant or two tenants on the first floor. So we will let the potential developers know that Kings is interested, that we think that, as we say in here, that is consistent with our master plan reexamination, and we would want them to come back with some indication that they think it would work for them, that they've had some conversations with King.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to address the Township Committee? Come up to the microphone first.
I just
say your name again for the
Ruth
record.
Ross, 169 Maplewood Avenue. My question is, and I guess I feel defensive about it, so I will say, yes, I only just retired a few months ago, and I worked long hours, but I guess my question is, how do I keep on top of the proceedings and the procedures and what's going on with all of this? Because as someone who lives right in the village and who plans to stay right there for the duration, I really want to be able to keep informed and be knowledgeable of who and what and when and where and how. And I really would like to know, perhaps a little more specifically than I am aware of now, how do I follow this process? And there has been, let me just add one thing. I can't quote the source or anything, but there has been comments from a variety of sources that the procedures and the goings-on up until now have not been clear and straightforward and available. So, is this accurate? I can't say. I'm just saying that this was something that I became apprised of. So yes, I would like to know, how is it that I can keep aware of what's going on?
Actually, if I could, just out of curiosity, turn it around a little bit and say, how would you like to find out about it? Where would you naturally, you said you just retired, where would you sort of naturally like to go?
The newspaper?
Newspaper?
I do not.
News record?
And I never will do Facebook or Twitter.
Right, that's what I assume. Not everyone goes to the same places, right. So the newspaper, you said?
And I read the Times, I read the Maplewood South Orange News Record, and I'll even read the Wall Street Journal.
Well, I don't know if we can get our stuff into the Journal, but certainly the News Record is a mechanism, so if we put it in there.
Yes, any relevant local publications. I can and will and would also go online, but I would have to know some of these online sources, which I'm sure that I'm not quite
So if we
familiar
put in the News Record, go to this website,
yes,
or go to this something,
yes,
you could.
Yes,
okay.
I would like to know that.
Okay. I didn't know, places like the library.
Yeah, I
perhaps.
do the library. I do frequent the library. I belong to a reading group there. Now that I've retired, I have I can live.
Ms. Ross, you came last meeting and said you don't do that, the internet stuff, and we suggested the internet stuff.
Oh, okay.
And you said, yeah.
That's an old person's
terminology.
I was too quick, maybe.
Okay, so we suggested to you about signing up for the paper copy of the Maplewood leaflet. You remember that?
Oh, no,
Okay, so that's one area. But the second thing is, all these documents that we have here at the clerk's office.
And this is
Here in Town Hall.
Okay, and
So you can come here.
Clerk's office and I can.
You can come here and just sit there and look at it.
And read.
And read. Sometimes and then we also have minutes, so if there's meeting minutes, you can get copies of those too and take a look at those.
Do we put, we don't put those at the library, the minutes and things like that? Yeah, okay.
Oh, but they're here in the clerk's office.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, no, okay.
Question, when you say, or someone said internet stuff, are you talking about the social media, or do you go onto the town website or to Patch where there's news articles each day?
Patch I have not gone to, no.
Anyway,
I haven't frequented those. I mean, I have email, I have a Mac computer, I do all that stuff, but I haven't done Patch and.
Well, that's a possibility for you between the social media and coming into town hall every week and finding out if it's a.
Yeah, but I wanted to hear just,
Yes.
absent anything else, what do you do? And you gave me that answer, so I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, all right, that's been helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you. I will be back.
Okay.
Anyone else want to address the Township Committee? We will have more opportunity later. Okay, if not, we'll close this public comment session, and I gotta look for my agenda. Here we go. Okay, we have an ordinance on final passage.
Yes, Mayor. Ordinance number 2723-13, an ordinance to amend Chapter 6 of the Code of the Township of Maplewood entitled Administration of Government. This ordinance will increase fees with ambulance services provided by the Maplewood Fire Department.
Is there, let me read the thing here. Okay. This ordinance has been published, copies posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building, and copies made available to the general public in accordance with the law. Is there anyone who wants to speak on this ordinance, which is raising the ambulance fee from $600 to $800? Seeing no one, will close the public hearing. Ms. Leventhal, can we get a motion?
Yes, Mayor, I move the ordinance be adopted as a whole and the clerk be directed to publish the same as a passed ordinance in the Maplewood South Orange News Record according to law.
Second.
Any discussion? This has been recommended by the Public Safety Committee, correct?
Yes.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Brownlee?
Yes.
Mrs. Laria?
Yes.
Ms. Leventhal?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes, thank you. Okay, we're going to move to discussion items, and since I see our planner, Paul Greigel, is here, we're going to start that off first. If we can get him to sit here. I'm sure you don't mind, Mr. Desiderio. Go in the corner over there. Okay, we talked about this meeting as being a markup meeting of the plan. So we will do that and go through the meeting. It might get a little, we might drill down a little bit on some of these things, but there's no other way to do it because we're now at the stage where we want to get an ordinance drafted for review by the planning board, introduced and reviewed by the planning board. Mr. Desiderio left us? Okay.
What?
Okay. We received a memo from the planning board. Mr. Greigel, did you get that?
I did.
Okay. And members of the Township Committee, you received it. So they made, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 recommendations. And Mr. Greigel, could you respond to these? Do you see any conflicts in their recommendation with what's in the plan or what you've heard from people so far? We're really at number 4, the first bullet.
Yes, I believe number 4, there are no issues. It's just further clarifying the objectives of the plan, which are kind of the overall guiding principles. The next bullet point with regard to encouraging a multiplicity of retail uses at the ground floor, both to encourage pedestrian access and to reflect architectural character. There are some portions of the draft plan that include language about retail spaces and promoting pedestrian activity, but we can add more language to that effect to make it clear to potential redevelopers of the intent of the redevelopment plan. So I can add some language.
Could you move the microphone a little closer to you?
I can add some language to that effect regarding pedestrian accessibility, retail stores that are similar in scale to those that exist in the village currently.
This next one was a bit of a debate as to whether or not we should put minimum square footage for the units, the residential units. And frankly, we were unclear as to why we ought to do that. Is there any reason why we should have some minimum square footage? Since we're saying it can't be more than 25 units.
Correct. The minimum unit sizes predated the cap that was put into the latest version of the plan. So strictly speaking, there's actually no reason to have those standards because you in effect have a average unit size regulation by capping it at 25 units. But the reason typically for that type of standard is just to have units that aren't too small for modern living, that there's a fear of there being people jammed in spaces that aren't adequate for living purposes. And the figures that we put in there actually are at the, they're somewhat low. That was the concern at the planning board levels. They should be higher, that larger units should be mandated. I don't think there's a need to come up with larger minimum unit sizes. The developers, I think, would know best what unit sizes make sense in the marketplace.
Yeah, so why would we put anything there?
In that case, again, now that we've added the cap, it's possible to even take out the minimum unit sizes.
Yeah, I think that's the feeling, because I think there was some ambivalence on the part of the planning board about having these smaller units and just let the market, if you know you got 25, you got to build it. And I don't think you're going to make 12 large ones and 13 small ones. I don't think so, but
not in my experience. But it's again.
So maybe let's take that out then.
Sure.
This next one is really just a technical thing, and that was the parking. There was a concern that a developer could, the way it was worded, could buy themselves out of a parking requirement. So, where we talk about, in number 27, the off-site improvements. Oh, no, I'm sorry, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about, we have so many things here.
Mayor, if I may, this deals with the term payment in lieu of parking.
Yeah, where is
I
that?
believe it's page 27, 26 or 27. And it's a term of art similar to payment in lieu of taxes. That's kind of where the term comes from. But I have no problem changing the language to be more explicit as to what the payment is for. So that's providing existing or future parking capacity. That's the suggestion.
Well, I think the thing, yeah, it's just that they didn't want to be able to, they didn't want somebody to buy out of their responsibility.
Understood, and I understand the concern.
Okay.
I have no problem making that change.
Okay. And then the other one was when we talked about the traffic study, there was a question about access points. And so just not the actual SID boundaries, but clear about the access points coming into the SID.
I think that goes beyond typically what's in a plan, but I, again, have no problem being more explicit about what should be included in a traffic study. I think it's a good suggestion.
And then on the definitions, I had recommended that we include all the definitions from the Village Alliance ordinance. You know, because there's some things there that may be repetitive, but and there was a suggestion, can't we just look over there? And I said, no, let's keep it in one document so we have nobody says, you know, I didn't know that kind of thing.
That's fine. We already referred to the SID regulations anyway, so there's no reason not to add them explicitly in the plan.
All right, and then on the, you got the last one on the off-site improvements, that making the complete policies instead of should, shall.
That's fine.
Okay. So, Mr. Desiderio, there you are. You're doing, you're working out of title. Oh, close to the window, okay. We're basically are in a position to agree to all the recommendations from the planning board.
Yes.
Okay, so that's, as far as anything we have to do with the planning board, we're okay with this. All right. Would you make a recommendation that we approve this, approve these as additions and instruct Mr. Greigel to insert them in the plan?
Yeah, yes, because what he's going to do now is he was going to correct the plan, and then if it's your intention, the one thing I would have changed with, you said earlier, was you didn't pass an ordinance initially, you passed a resolution to send it to the planning board.
Right.
So now it's a question of putting the ordinance on for introduction and for final.
Right.
And at that point, there would be public comment, obviously, on the final. So I would suggest, if that is your intent, that Mr. Greigel will amend that to reflect those changes, and then we can attach that to the ordinance and put it on for introduction.
Any questions about this? Because let's just do this as we move along.
As a pro forma, it'll go back to the planning board technically, but since you're adopting all of their recommendations, one would think that would just be a pro forma.
Yes. Well, we might adopt some others. I have some other things we might want to do. Let's get a motion to approve the inclusion of the recommendations of the planning board into the Maplewood Village Post Office redevelopment plan.
So moved.
For a second? Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mr. Brownlee?
Yes.
Mrs. Laria?
Yes.
Ms. Leventhal?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes. Okay, so the planning board recommendations are to be included. I would like to go to some of the recommendations from our redevelopment attorney. He had some language about the wording we had in here about Kings. No, you didn't get it. This was basically saying that the existing King's supermarket has expressed an interest in possibly relocating to the rehabilitation area. Such a relocation of the existing supermarket, subject to the terms and conditions of this redevelopment plan, would be consistent with the stated goal of retaining, renewing, and developing critical anchors of the township's commercial district. I think it makes it, I think it's a better language than we have right now. No offense to you, because you wrote the language, but...
I'm a planner, not a lawyer.
Okay, and it might, because it also just it makes it that they've expressed interest, because I think the language you have, find it, this is always the hard part, page 8. Yeah, you have a section that says, the township is, let me see if I can find the exact words, because I don't want to not state it properly. This is the sausage making of local government or government in general. You say it is noted that the relocation of the existing King's Supermarket in Maplewood Village to the rehabilitation area would be consistent with the above goal. I think what he's suggesting is to make it clear that King's has expressed an interest in doing it, and therefore it is consistent.
That's fine. I don't have the copy of that comment in front of me
Okay.
here, but I have seen it, and
All right.
I can make that change.
All right, let me just flag that as a, and then he raised another issue here, which I would, it says the plan is silent on the issue of subdivision.
What page you on?
This is his memo, which I think only Mr. Desiderio and I got from him. But he says the issue, the development plan is silent on the issue of subdivision, though it seems conceivable, if not probable, that consolidation and re-subdivision of the lots may be required to achieve all of the objectives regarding mixed public and private use and access. Have you thought about that, or is this an issue, or is this an issue of a lawyer versus a planner?
Typically, redevelopment plans don't supersede any existing subdivision ordinances, so there's always the ability to subdivide. But that said, I see no reason not to include the additional language. I mean, that's what you hire redevelopment counsel for. If in his experience it makes sense to put that language in, I'm fine with adding it. Again, I don't think there's anything that were precluded in the current draft, but again, I'll defer to counsel as to putting that language in.
And then he also asks why the plan, the duration of the plan is 40 years, where he's usually seen a 30 or 35-year plan.
At this point, I don't recall the exact reasoning. We wrote the initial draft over a year ago, but if 30 or 35 is preferable, that's not a problem to me. Basically, there should be just some period of time, so
Right.
there's a guarantee that, this will stay in effect. But I'll defer again to legal counsel as to the exact number of years.
You have a recommendation, Mr. Desiderio?
My sense was probably to go with the 30-year, but I don't think there's any reason why Mr. Greigel couldn't call Ms. Mariella and have that conversation with him, and maybe he can check his notes as to what his intent was, and they can come up with a recommendation.
Well, I would suggest that we add the language that the lawyer's suggesting for King's to make it clear that it's King's has expressed an interest. And that we look into the subdivision issue and put something in there making it clear on the subdivision, and that we get some clarity on 40 versus 30 years of duration.
I'm fine with all those changes, and we'll make them.
And then Mr. Greigel can talk to Mr. Mariella, and then when we get the new draft, he can offer whatever explanation.
Okay.
Conversation. You've spoken to him.
Yes.
Okay. I would like to go through does anyone have anything they want to talk about at the moment? I want to go through the document and just point to the changes for the public. This could be a little bit of a little tedious, but I'm not going to do the word changes, but I think there's a couple of big changes that we ought to talk about. We made it clear in this draft that once the rehabilitation area is developed, this is on page 10, the Township Committee will add the rehabilitation area to the Maplewood Village Special Improvement District. Before, it was May. But we wanted to make it clear that this is going to be part of the improvement district. Right now, it's not because well, geographically it is, but it's not because it's a publicly owned land. And then, Mr. Greigel, on page 13, where we talk about land uses, we've changed the width of any individual retail business to 30 feet.
That's correct. There was a concern about maintaining the character of existing storefronts, which are typically more in the range of 30, 40 feet. So we've lowered the minimum. I think it was 50 at a minimum previously in the plan.
I think that came from the Village Alliance.
Yes, I think so, and also comments at the planning board meeting as well. There were some folks from the public there who also raised that issue. But
And then we also had, in the initial draft, we had a maximum of 80 feet depth of these stores, and now we've created a minimum of 25 feet.
Right.
Correct?
That's just to make usable retail spaces, but again, not to micromanage the development. If you want deeper storefronts, great, but at least to have a minimum so you don't have a 10-foot deep, retail area at street level.
Okay, and then we made it clear that we're talking about 1 and 2 bedrooms, and that any affordable housing regulation that's in existence at the time will be met.
Yeah, I think you might want to be broader than that. State or local affordable housing regulation, because I don't know what the status of affordable housing is. And it may very well be that the governing body decides that they want to impose something that may not otherwise be state imposed. That would just be my recommendation at this point.
So you would have, which shall comply with applicable state or local laws, regulations.
Right. Regarding affordable housing.
Yeah, governing affordable housing.
That would be my recommendation.
But we do leave the 10%.
Yes. Okay. So, is everybody okay with adding local as Mr. Desiderio is recommending? Okay. We're taking out the minimum size. Now, talk about the height of the buildings, of the facades along Maplewood Avenue, Rickleton Square, and then along that south front.
Okay, the issue is, I'm sure you're aware, and the public's aware, is there's a slope to the property. So this isn't as simple as writing, there's a 3-story limit on height. In this case, you have a grade change of approximately 10 feet from Rickleton Square down to the Village Coffee Lot. So a building that, if it were to be 3 stories at Rickleton Square and continued across, would appear to be 4 stories at the south end. So we've given a lot of thought to this. There's been public comment and planning board comment on this issue. So we've further refined the regulations to try to maintain two stories along Maplewood Avenue, except if there's a continuation of the existing story. I have some language in there about essentially going with the grade change, so you don't have to cut off at one spot. There could be some continuation. And that additional height would be permitted above the 2-story level. That's actually consistent with the existing zoning for Maplewood Village, where there's a step back allowed. In fact, it's at a higher height. I believe it's after 3 stories in the current zoning. So the intention here is to try to maintain a 2-story scale on the street, allow more depth further back. Also, at the north and south ends of the property, to have 2 stories permitted on the north end on Rickleton Square, 3 stories at Village Coffee, and anything in addition to that would have to be stepped back from the facade. This way, you're trying to eliminate having, excessively tall building facades, shadow impacts, that type of thing.
So if I was standing where the community bulletin board is, where that is to the left of the entrance to the post office.
Yes.
Then I would see if I looked there, I would see a 2-story building on both
Correct.
the Rickleton Square side and the Maplewood Avenue side, correct?
Yes.
And then if I moved across the street, I might see a 3rd story, but it would be back at least 10 feet.
That's correct, yes. That's, again, the idea that at street, when you're standing right next to the building, it does not appear as massive.
But correct me if I'm wrong, I thought it was the step back, excuse me, my voice is not good today. The step back is 1 foot for every foot.
30. Every foot above 30.
Above 30 on the Maplewood Avenue side, but on the Village Coffee, it's 2 feet back for every foot.
That's
over
correct.
40.
Or 40. So how do you build this?
Well, because
Can't visualize
on the Maplewood, on the Village Coffee side, which is a different look, you have the capacity of putting an additional story because the thing
Because of the
slopes down.
slope.
So almost like a basement story.
Gotcha.
So you'd have a basement, and you'd have your 1st floor and your 2nd floor, and then if the 3rd floor, which would be your 3rd floor, would be stepped back
Correct.
20 feet.
That's correct. That would allow for, say, terraces, either private terraces, or in the case of the 20-foot one, more than likely a common space for residents of the building, or a public space. It could be whatever a redeveloper proposes. We leave it up to architects to design exactly how to address this standard. Quite frankly, it is a more difficult standard to meet. If you were to have straight buildings of 3 to 4 stories, from a planning point of view, I'd typically put those regulations in because that's easier, more cost-effective. But we recognize their concerns about the additional height, so it makes sense to have some type of step back.
Part of what you do, Mr. Greigel, take these 10-foot step backs, 20-foot step backs, height limits, and make sure to 25 apartments can fit in there.
I've done some rough calculations on that, and they clearly, if you do the numbers, they clearly will fit. You could actually probably get a larger number if they were normal size apartments, but that's the reason for having the cap of 25. But that said, there also will be staircases, utility areas, lots of common spaces that will take up space too. So I think the numbers work to get to the 25 units. One other thing I would add with regard to the height, the mayor's comment about the basement, first, second story, just to be clear, we're requiring retail space or active spaces on all frontages, so it's not going to be just a forgotten basement level, so to speak, or garage level, but it would be an active level with additional stories above it. Yeah, this is certainly a concern. It's been a concern all along, and quite frankly, thinking about how to write this plan, that's been the hardest part of it to deal with, to try to figure out a solution that works. But I think this one, you know, what we have currently makes sense. We'll have to wait and see what potential redevelopers think as to how they can draw up the plans for a building.
We also clarified that any setback is setback from the sidewalk.
Yes.
Not from the curb.
Yes, and I believe that was in response to the Village Alliance as well.
And we widened the sidewalk widths.
Yes, and that's a good change. It makes sense in the Maplewood Village context. One last thing on height. There's also an absolute cap as well, as measured from the average grade to the height of the top of the building. So there's more than two actually, but a number of calculations going into height. So in case there's a worry that you could manipulate this to somehow get a 70-foot tall building or something like that, there still is a 45-foot cap in terms of the average height.
There's a section on architectural style, and what was added, I believe, was the recommendation from the ad hoc group that met in New York.
Yes, that's right.
That it's almost verbatim, I think, is it?
Pretty much.
Pretty much, right? You maybe changed a couple words, but
exactly.
It talks about architectural style following traditional 20th century architectural traditions of the village. Predominant material is masonry, usually brick, including stone, terracotta. Buildings are 1 to 3 stories. Then it talks about the strong base of buildings, clear glass, entrance doors, roofs, flat roofs, things like that. So we've taken what was recommended to us and put it in here?
Yes, again, almost word for word.
Okay. There was a question about the number of bike racks. We made it clear that there'd be 3 bike racks required, minimum.
Yes.
And that they have to be in keeping with the rest of the bike racks in the village, correct?
Yes.
A bike rack can have 2 bikes, a bike rack can have 8 bikes. We want to address that with a minimum, maybe.
It could be put in there. I mean, typically we just assume that there will be a standard bicycle rack, but redevelopment plans allow for that level of detail. So if there's a desire to do that, we can do that.
That's a little more detailed.
Sure, we'll come up with a number. That's a good idea.
One thing the attorney asked, and this is something that we might want to clarify, is we do talk about creating the public spaces. We don't say anything in here. They talk about creating the publicly accessible open spaces, seating area, pedestrian plaza, but we don't talk about who's responsible for maintaining it. We probably should. I mean, we can put that in the letter of inquiry. We can put that certainly in the redevelopment agreement, but we ought to put it in here that it is a, well, like in New York when you get height density waivers, you have to build public space and and do that, but we're not going to give any density waivers for this. But we do want to, I think, keep in here that it is a public space, and it should be maintained by the property owner.
That makes sense. Again, I typically would leave it to the redeveloper's agreement, but there's no reason
Yeah,
not
I'd like to put it in
in.
here so it's clear when they're looking at it, so if somebody wants to walk away because they don't want to send somebody out to sweep, they can do that.
That's fine.
Okay. Okay, again, we talked about the vertical demarcation, 30 or linear feet along the building facade. So this is page 24. So let's talk about if King's was a sole tenant on floor 1, it would have to be designed in a way that it would look like there are every 30 feet there'd have to be.
It wouldn't have to be a storefront per se, you know, a completely different type of building material, but some type of a change in the depth of the facade is one possibility. A change in the building materials with the bricks, a different type of coursing. This is a very standard type of language to use in urban design documents to break up the mass of a larger building, because that's concerned. You don't want to have something that is a 100-foot long straight wall along Maplewood Avenue. So we do have some other language elsewhere in here about having a certain number of windows, about how they should be larger on the ground floor, smaller upstairs, very common. So that would be the intent, is just to break up the mass of the building. So that's what it would be, but it would not necessarily be an entrance every 30 feet,
Right.
per se.
But it would be, so if we looked at what's called Ashley's Market now,
Right.
on South Orange Avenue,
Eden, yep.
that's sort of a flat front, correct?
Yes.
We're not talking about creating that.
No, the idea is it would be more in scale with Maplewood Village design. That it would, and for that matter, the existing Kings, where you have pretty much straight across.
Right.
You wouldn't be able to do something like that. Again, it's not a major change, but something that it's noticeable. The language will, again,
So
is
that
elsewhere in there
every
about that.
30 feet, there would be something different, even though it could still be a window and you could look in there and see King's stuff. The outside of the framing of that window would be something different for every 30 feet. So you might look and it would just, the buildings itself would just look different.
It could be piers of the building through concrete or masonry. It could be, again, different type of bricks. It could be a change in building materials. There are a lot of options. Again, we don't try to design down to the fine details, but we put language in there that the architects designing the building would have to, address the plans regulations.
And then we talk about the glazing, 75% has to be glass.
Yes, that was an increased percentage based on feedback from the Village Alliance and its the architects on that committee. That makes sense at a street level. We're fine with making that change.
And then let's talk about the bike path behind the building.
Yes.
We talked about that now, that it has to incorporate lighting, landscaping, and other features to make it safe and attractive. This is on page 25. So we added that language.
That's correct. The issue was that it wouldn't just be an asphalt path that's forgotten in the back and is an unsafe area. So the planning board suggested adding some additional language to make it clear that it must be, adequately maintained and safe for pedestrians, bicyclists, and also just appearance-wise that it's kept up as part of the development.
Let's go to parking on page 26. So there was a comment tonight about public parking. Now, there's existing public parking there within the rehabilitation area, and what we're saying is that it shall remain or be replaced by an equivalent or greater number of public parking spaces. And it has to be in the rehabilitation area or within reasonable walking distance. And then we say there are 33 existing public parking spaces in the rehab area. So if a developer came in and took that and built the building in such a way, or created a plaza and a building or whatever in such a way that used up those 33 spots, he or she would have to find 33 spots some other place.
That's exactly right.
And they need to provide a minimum of 25 spots if the building has 25 units for the renters, and they need to provide parking for the square footage equivalents within the stores.
Correct. Either provide that parking or pay, again, the in lieu fee, which would be dedicated towards creating spaces elsewhere. It could be through permits with the township. It could be through other measures, but somehow providing the adequate number of spaces for their employees, for customers, and certainly for residents as well.
Now, does that option exist for these 58-plus parking spaces for all of them, or there are three types of parking needed: to the replacement, the renters, and the stores?
The renters have to be in the building.
Right, okay.
So that's
And
25.
that's clear in here? I might have missed that, okay.
That's residential parking. It's right below it.
Oh,
Yes.
did-
Yeah, that's a good point. Again, it's broken out into three categories. Public parking, that's it. It has to be provided on-site or nearby. Residential parking, again, in the building. Just the reality of the marketplace is you need to have at least one parking space per unit to make it marketable. Developers won't build without that. But we're also requiring some additional spaces, which then could be off-site. So for guest parking or additional rented spaces for tenants. But then the non-residential parking for retail space, for offices or anything else, could be provided on or off-site or through other measures.
So the statement about their option to pay would be for the 33 that exist now and the retail?
Correct.
Okay.
And just to be clear, we are not, no one gets any reserved, other than the residents who live there. There's no reserved parking.
That's correct.
It's all public parking.
Yes. It's consistent with it setting next to a train station. We recognize parking is a problem, but you don't want to have the project devoted to mainly housing cars and lose space that's, developable for commercial uses, for residential uses.
And then we talked before about the sidewalks will be a minimum of 11 feet wide and a maximum of 15 feet wide. And that was a change.
Yes, per the Village Alliance again,
Right.
yes.
And, okay. And then off-site improvements. We're talking about this traffic impact study. Could you talk? Yes.
I have something before
Go
that.
ahead.
Okay. On the loading. Could you explain, I read one place where there's one curb break for entrance and egress on Maplewood Avenue, but then the loading talks about coming in via Rickleton Square. So I'm not saying they contradict one another, but can you sort of lay it out a little clearer for me?
Sure. The idea is to not have multiple driveways on Maplewood Avenue. You'd essentially end up with this. The way the plan's written now, you're kind of pushing it to have the driveway where the Village Coffee Lot exists. So the thought was just not to allow for a secondary driveway halfway up the property or somewhere else for pedestrian safety reasons. But the language does not preclude other access points from the parking lot to the south or from Rickleton Square. So that language was only limiting the Maplewood Avenue driveways.
What about the loading? If a truck comes in, how does a truck come in there? Let's say if I'm coming in with a truck. Right now, you know how it comes in and blocks Maplewood
Yes,
Avenue.
I do.
So we don't want to continue that. So a truck comes in to unload for King's, if King's is across the street. The loading dock is along the railroad tracks in the back.
Right.
How does it get to that loading dock?
The preferred alternative is through Rickleton Square, the area where the post office trucks currently load and unload. It'd be essentially pulling in the same way mail trucks do today, backing into there most likely, and then pulling straight out through Rickleton Square. I believe actually the trucks that go to King's also use Rickleton Square for
Yes.
turning around when they come
Yes.
in.
Well,
So it's
they
essentially
unload
keeping
it.
that same movement. So there is some language to that effect there. Maybe it could be made clearer,
Okay.
but that's the intention, is to have trucks come and go. Rickleton Square is a public street. That's why I didn't call it out separately for access reasons.
So the 30 feet would allow, the 30 feet that remains in Rickleton Square, which is not part of property, Lot 180, would be enough to do that kind of thing, to pull in and...
Well, right, it would be using the public street, though. If you look on the tax, there's a map in here that shows the green space portion, if you will, is a separate lot, but the roadway is essentially a public street like any other street right-of-way.
Well,
So it's using that
the-
area.
It's similar to the straight back trucks that come into the post office. They go right there into that lot, come down, make a left, stop, and then back into the loading docks, and that's what a truck would do.
That's the intention currently, is to keep auto traffic to the south side, truck traffic to the north.
And that remains, basically, that mechanism is still there after we designate the redevelopment.
Yeah.
But maybe it should say something to the effect as already in existence. Or, I don't know. That's getting too fussy about it?
I think so.
Okay, all right, just ask if they need to.
Yeah, they'll figure it out. Talk about the traffic impact study.
Sure. There are certainly concerns about how traffic will be managed both through the development process, through construction, and once this is built. So we've added some additional language requiring a traffic study, and there was the talk of the impact on all access points to Maplewood Village, which will clarify. Someone made a very good suggestion of using the boundaries of the Maplewood Village Special Improvement District as the study area. So that would include actually both sides of the tracks, because Dunnell Road has some properties in the SID.
Right.
So
And we're
this
going to
is-
make some changes to that based on the comments from the planning board.
Yes,
about
we'll clarify what
including the
that means.
access roads to the special improvement district.
And pedestrian access points for that matter as well was a concern that was raised. But this, again, goes beyond the typical redevelopment plan language by requiring right up front, knowing that a potential redeveloper will need to pay for this study and it'll be evaluated by the township's professionals.
That complete streets is changed to shall.
Shall.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. There is an impact from construction. We added some section here on page 34. What is that about?
This was again in response to the Special Improvement District's concerns, Maplewood Village Alliance's concerns, to provide some more detail as to screening and fencing and limiting disruptions to surrounding areas, to make it safe, to make it the pedestrians able to walk through the area. There's no, we could put as much as we want in the plan. The reality is we'll have to, as this goes before the township committee, first in negotiating with the redeveloper, and then the planning board dealing with site plan will have to work out the fine details. But we've put in a lot of language here about fencing and about minimizing impacts. So it's clear that you can't just build something and say, oh, well, we're going to shut down half of Maplewood Ave for the duration of the project, or we're going to take away, parking spaces or otherwise impact the existing businesses.
Yeah, and that would generally be in a developer agreement, okay, not the redeveloper agreement, the actual developer agreement, which we record as a document and which binds the construction of it. So we deal with traffic safety, construction safety, amongst other things in that document. So that's a third document that ultimately will be drafted.
I'll just add one other item I added to that section was to, on the fencing that goes around the project, to have something such as artwork, historical photos, or other design features. So it's not just a blank fence.
Right.
But to try to come up with something creative that matches Maplewood's, spirit.
We've talked with the Village Alliance to maybe even having some art contests or, working with young artists to do something, but make it more, even during the whole construction, to continue to make it part of the village as best we can.
Agreed. I think it's a great idea.
Okay. Now, there's a section here on page 33, design review. And we have here, any site plan for development in the rehabilitation area shall be provided to the Maplewood Village Alliance for its review and comment. We want to change that to, let's say, not the we. The Economic Development Committee wants to recognize the existing responsibility of the Village Alliance in approving or being involved in the design standards. They now have the right to be involved in the design. That's part of their responsibility. And so we'll put some language in there that allows them to be involved with the design review. The only question is, right now, they are in, and this, Mr. Desiderio, you can help us out with this, they are involved in the review after the planning board. And I think it would be, for example, here, design review process. Within the Maplewood Village Special Improvement District, all work, whether or not requiring a permit, blah, 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 shall be approved prior to the start of work by the Village Alliance. Subsequent to approval from the Village Alliance, the applicant may, okay, so this is after. Subsequent, the applicant may proceed to secure a building permit from the construction official. But what they say here is that in the planning board goes first. And what I'd like to be clear about is we want the Village Alliance to have a shot at this before the planning board. You see any problem with that? No. Okay. So we will change this. Now, we did get a request from the group that was meeting in New York to set up a design review advisory committee for the redevelopment of the Maplewood Post Office. The Township Committee's Economic Development Committee talked about this, and we're recommending against its establishment because we already have two entities responsible for design review, the Village Alliance and the Springfield Avenue Partnership. And what we did not think was useful was to create an additional and separate body for design review. But we did want to make sure that we would change the plan to make sure that the Village Alliance will have design review responsibilities, and that we will inform the Alliance that there is a group that has expertise and that has offered their assistance. And if they would like to bring on some of these parties as part of their design review, they'd be free to do that. We thought that was a better way of making it clear that we already have a group, and that's how we want to move forward.
Do you say they can or encourage them to? I don't know if you can.
Well, we could do encourage. You know, we could put something here about encourage.
Something a little bit more.
Yeah. Encourage inclusion. The other thing is that, to make it clear, though, that the Alliance will not be involved in the selection of the developer. By law, that is the redevelopment authority, and that's what we are. That's correct, Mr. Desiderio? Yes. Okay. I think that is it. That's it, right, Mr. Greigel? I think of the major changes.
I think you've covered them all.
Okay.
You sure hope so.
All right. As promised, we're going to open up the microphone in case anyone would like to make a comment about what you heard, any other suggestions that you would like to share with us, and before we move forward with this.
Hi, my name is Kurt Kiley, 506 Summit Avenue. Again.
Yeah, use the microphone a little
sorry
closer.
about that. Just had a couple questions about parking. In the plan, it says that it's 400 square foot per parking space for retail. Is that correct, or is that?
One space per 400.
Now, that is lower than traditionally what are in other cities requirement. Like Nutley, it's like 200 per parking space. So how is that?
That comes from our zoning. Correct?
Well, actually, in this case, I modified the standard to be reflective of the transit-oriented location, the downtown setting. Correct. Typically, suburban parking requirement would be one space for every 200 feet or 250 square feet. That's what you'd see at, say, Pathmark or a freestanding CVS. In my opinion, in Maplewood Village, you don't want to encourage as many parking spaces, given that people can walk to stores and it's next to a train station.
So people have taken a train to Kings?
No, that's not necessarily the case, but the fact that when you're in a downtown or transit-oriented setting, you typically don't want to devote as much space to parking because people are not always just driving there. You have a mix of uses. You may park once and then walk to multiple stores. You may go to the movie theater and a restaurant in one trip. So you don't need to have again, to use the example of a CVS or a Pathmark, you drive there and then you drive away. That's not usually how it works in a downtown.
Is there any guest parking? So we have 25, one parking space per residence. What about guest parking?
I think it said 1.5, didn't it?
It's,
Yeah.
I thought it said 1.5 per.
That's correct. The requirement's 1.5 spaces per unit, of which one must be on site for the residents.
Yeah.
But the additional parking would be for guests or additional.
we have the capacity to rent out spaces in public lots. We have public lots around town that we rent out spaces overnight.
So so roughly we started with what we have is about 40 parking spaces that we're going to require for the retail, now that it's shrunk down to about 16,000 square feet. It's about 400.
Correct.
All right. Where is that parking coming from currently?
It can come from creating new parking. It can come from buying permits, parking permits. For example, Kings Now buys parking permits for their employees to park in the Bergdorf lot. It can come from creating parking on site. We may find a developer who wants to put an underground parking garage. So those are all the possibilities.
Okay. So now it sounds like we're down to, originally we started, it's going to be like Kings and multiple retail locations, and then as the building shrunk, and then it's Kings and
I'm not sure that's accurate. That's maybe how you described it.
Well, the gentleman just said that the building is down to about 16,000 square foot.
Yeah, I think it's 60%, so we've got 30, so I think it's still closer to 20%. It's 60%, not 50%. So 33 times 60 is close to, let's say 20,000 square feet.
Okay, so roughly, because the grocery area is roughly 15,000, so now
Let's
we're down
say, yeah.
to Kings and a retail area, or
Yeah.
grocery and retail area.
Yeah, could be. Or it could be, there could be no grocery store and just multiple retails too.
But we are encouraging Kings to move.
Yes.
We've got language in there to move that.
We recognize their interest in moving. That's what it says.
Yes, we recognize their interest. Were they interested? Or
Yes. And we are interested
encourage
in them
to
moving.
be
Yes.
interested in it?
Yes.
How does this fit in with the economic development plan of turning the village into an entertainment destination?
There is no economic development plan to turn it into a destination.
What does the economic development plan for the village state?
It talks about now there's a retail recruitment plan that talks about the utilizing a mix of restaurants, shops, boutiques, and the cultural places. The master plan talks about all that too, but there's no plan to make it, I don't think there's any language that we have that makes it a sort of a cultural destination center.
Yeah, I'll have to check that, because I was reading a lot of the documents regarding that, and there was a point of turning it
Well,
into...
it's also possible that it was in the Columbia study as a recommendation.
I'm going to suggest something that's probably heresy, is could we eliminate the tenants at the top and turn the bottom into public parking, because the village really needs parking? And that would free up more people to come into the village rather than having 25 private parking spaces in there, because you could get a lot more turnover with 25 public parking spaces. Goes against the grain of increasing the density in the village, but I think if you're trying to improve economic activity, you want places where people can park and then move around into the village, and possibly even turn the top of the building into public open space. Might be a little bit out of the box thinking, but maybe we can do some creative ways of activating the village, as Columbia study said. Get people into the village and socialize and engage with the area. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wants to address the Township Committee here?
Hi, Rich Wenner, 37 North Terrace. First of all, I continue to be appreciative of the degree to which you've been open and adopted suggestions as they've come in. So I appreciate that. One small point, but potentially a significant one. If I recall, unless it's been changed while I wasn't paying attention, the building was called for LEED certified status.
Yes.
Seems to me that's a really very small, minimal requirement at this point. These days, and I study green buildings somewhat, LEED certified by itself is something that, it's, if an architect didn't do that as a matter of course with the standard practices, you'd wonder where they were trained. Getting to LEED silver, LEED gold, there's a lot of buildings that doesn't even, that can do that without even that big a stretch. I think it would be worth looking into something a little more stringent, whether that's something you put in the plan or something you negotiate. Maplewood likes to consider itself a town that supports that kind of green thing, and it seems to me that wouldn't be a hard thing to do.
I've actually had a realtor tell me that, too.
Yeah, well, as you might guess, that these come with a cost. So if we're requiring more, then the developers are going to want to argue that there needs to be some kind of benefit that they get. Now, we have here, Township encourages the redeveloper to exceed the certified status by accumulating additional points and higher ratings pursuant to the LEED evaluation process.
Which may be, again, depending on how you negotiate that.
Right.
It turns out that, in fact, people game these points. You can get an awful lot of points with almost no cost. And even some buildings that have gone up to fairly high status figure they add maybe 5% of the cost. So no one's suggesting they need to put a couple hundred solar panels on the roof, unless unless the utility is willing to pay them for that, which they might.
I think the wording here gives us that ability to do what you're saying, is to sit there and say, what more can you do? Mm-hmm. There is one complication here that our redevelopment attorney pointed out. These always come, LEED certification comes at the end. You have to build the building, then you get certified. We have a certificate of completion when we use a redevelopment project. We don't have a certificate of completion with a rehabilitation project.
But we have the ultimate power, and that's certificates of occupancy.
Okay.
And if they're not compliant with the certificates of, with what we want, they don't get their certificates of occupancy. So we do have control.
Okay. The hammer has spoken.
Okay. Just wanted to point that out, so I'm fine with that. The one other thing, is that, and some of the architects that have talked to you, I think, have mentioned this at various times. I continue to be a little unclear, and therefore maybe a little concerned about the degree to which the request process, and we've talked a little bit about process, is going to be one in which you can search for not just the developer, but also have part of that process be selecting the designer, so that we're not, as someone said, I saw on TV very early on tonight, we're not just getting a developer in who's going to be able to do the design from that particular economic perspective. Some developers are good people and do good things, but you want to be able to have a selection part of the process, which gets me back to what you said about the design review a few minutes ago. I fully understand that you are the legal authority that makes the selection. It doesn't mean that you don't have the ability to turn to your design review committee, whether it's with the Village Alliance or wherever it is, and say, can you give us some advice on the design quality of the team that's coming in? And it seems to me that if you're going to be selecting in part based on the quality of the architect and their architecture, at least what they've done in the past, there's really no one with a design background in this committee that can make those kinds of judgments. It's the kind of thing that having someone with some architectural experience really can do best. So I would encourage you, whether you write that down, how you put that in, to at least ask your design review committee to look at and be part of the process of reviewing the proposals that come in and make recommendations to you. Obviously, as with almost everything that happens in the town, the final decision is with you guys.
Couple points. One is that when we ask for their qualifications or the letters of interest, we'll ask for the team, who is going to be, or what is going to be the team that gets created. So we want to know architects, engineers, planners, who are they putting together, and we want to know where they've worked. We want to see what they've done. Some of the things that you've talked about in your memo to us.
Yeah.
So, yes, so we will make sure, it's just not talking to who the developer is. There's nothing that stops us from doing what you're suggesting in the second point about asking for help.
Yes, and I'm just trying to encourage that.
I think what we're a little bit hesitant about putting it in documents to a developer because they don't need to know what we need to do in order to make our decision. And we don't want to send messages that there are waves of people that they have to meet with because we don't think we're going to get a robust response. But doesn't say that, when we say we're going to be making a decision, we may decide, as you say, that we need some help, and we can go out and get that expertise as you're talking about.
Right, so I'm talking about the message between you and us as opposed to you and the developer, and I'm just wanting to encourage that. I hear what you're saying.
Okay.
I'm wanting to encourage that as something you guys take under advisement.
We will.
Thank you.
Anybody else want to talk to us about this?
Hi, I'm Thomas Pauley, 10 Morse Drive. I have a question, maybe rhetorical, to ask of the Township Committee. I know that you love this community, and I know that you're working hard for this community. So my question is, why is the Township Committee settling for a developer's building? Why are the 5 of you not demanding that this once in a century opportunity not be the envy of architects and urban planners everywhere? We're Maplewood, and we deserve better. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to address the Township Committee? Okay, we're going to close off this.
One.
Yeah, I got it.
Dave Helmkamp, could you clarify the schedule now going forward? I know that I believe the planning board date has changed.
No, it has not. Yes, if I can find that piece of paper I have.
Have it
on. So tonight we've talked about this. We are going to instruct Mr. Greigel to make the changes. June 18th, which is our next meeting, we will introduce an ordinance. Refer that to the planning board. The planning board meets on July 9th. They will review it, and it will come back here for final hearing and final consideration on July 16th.
I think originally it was going to be introduced on July 2nd.
No, originally it was going to
introduce and referring to the planning board at the same time.
No. Originally we were going to introduce it on the 18th.
Practical matter, it doesn't make a difference because it can't. There's going to be 2 meetings in between.
Right.
Whether it's introduced on the 18th or it's introduced on the 2nd, the planning board doesn't meet to the 9th, so the final can't be to the 18th.
Yeah, I just want to give the planning board enough time. I mean, we haven't really made substantial changes here, but I just want to give the planning board enough time.
Okay, I think the word introduced was not used on the 18th to my recollection previously, but I may be mistaken. The level of detail that was discussed today was very helpful. I think that I'll just, on behalf of the Engage Maplewood, and reiterate the notion that the verbal exchange between people who have been technically part of this process over time is not something that the general public can digest and understand, particularly the people who are not professionals. I have a related professional background, a number of other people involved in the activity do as well, obviously. But the ability of the public to understand what might be built on that site, based on this dialogue tonight, I don't think is sufficient. And it is what is included in the petition request, that it be presented in layperson's terms and that people react to that. The other hope, I said earlier, one of the motivations is so that people who do come to comment are pre-informed. Of course, on this schedule, there are only 2 other dates where there is actually a public comment period, so that's why the petition asks that the informing the public more generally happens before those limited opportunities for one-way comment to you as a body, as opposed to a dynamic where there could be more learning involved. So, I think that the format and a lot of the issues addressed in tonight's forum, tonight's discussion were positive. I want to make the distinction between that improvement and what the petition is requesting specifically. Thank you.
Just to clarify it, there's 4 times that people can talk on this. They can talk on it on the 18th, July 2nd, which is we have a Township Committee meeting, July 9th, which is the Planning Board meeting, and July 16th, which is the Township Committee meeting. Yes?
I just would like to make a comment. I counted at one point in time about 12 people here didn't identify as being one of us or a person from the press. You mentioned if we could reach 1 in 5. Well, we reached 12 tonight. And if they go out and reach 5, that's 60, and then they go out and so on and so on and so on, to mimic an old commercial. It's very difficult to reach everyone, and to your point, not everyone has the technical ability to understand everything. But I think the people here have some information, and if you push that out, people are more informed. So I would certainly suggest that to everyone who was here, if they happen to watch this. But absolutely push this out, because just as you say, it's our responsibility to communicate. We're doing community meetings for a number of different things. This is no different than that. Certainly push some of this information out.
That's certainly what we're hoping to do, and also even come back with thoughts as to where the disconnect is. I think fundamentally the disconnect is that people are extremely busy, and we have a preponderance of 2-worker households and plenty of single-parent households that make it extremely difficult for people to get the information they want, so they can decide whether they want to make it a priority in their lives to come here. That's really what it comes down to, because I fill up my day 6 a.m. to midnight, just like I'm sure all of you do, with a lot of activities, and every one of them is a prioritization. And going out and reading this document to assess whether I want to participate is something I've chosen to do. Expecting the population at large to do that is not realistic. And it's not, that is the sense in which it's not effective. People have said it's ineffective, and it sounds like they're saying Township is not informing people. No, the end result is it's not effective. You're not getting input. No one said you didn't try.
I don't know, we made a lot of changes here based on impact.
Very limited. I don't think the numbers...
You've been to all the meetings, right?
I have, and the other group, the New York group, really represents one voice. And right now, there are a couple more voices at the second planning board meeting. But my point being is that when you advertised the public forum meetings, people did show up. You asked them to come. Now those people, I believe, those people deserve the opportunity to see whether the document reflects their inputs. And I also believe that it's the same process as telling them, describing to them what the document is. Because if you expect those 30 people to print the document and sit at home and read it to that level of detail, whereas they could get, the reality is that it's 3 or 4 sections of the document that are the most significant. And if people explained those sections in a forum with some diagrams, and it was advertised, and people were invited to come learn about the document because we're making a decision in the next month, you'll probably get at least the 30 you got at the other forum meetings. With our help, you'll get a lot more.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah?
Yes.
Just want to amplify Ms. Laria's comment a little bit as well. You have formed, I say you, metaphorically speaking, have formed a group who obviously has a vested interest in you're talking about the communication process. The sentiment of her remarks also grows out of that initiative that you mentioned earlier that I'm speaking to, and one of the things that we emphasized in that meeting was that it was a working meeting and that it wasn't just something where the people who were in the room got information and now they've got it and they're great and they're informed, but rather that they needed to take that information and disseminate it out. Again, just sort of amplifying her remarks in terms of that encouragement that you've got a group of people. You said tonight's communication was fairly effective. It might have been nice, to your point, if we had maybe more proactive in advance of this meeting, informing them so that they might have come tonight if they had made that decision, if you would. But having said that, given that you were here tonight, I'm saying you metaphorically, you and the group, if you would, and have heard this information and feel that it has been informative, I do think there's some sort of, we're all in this together type of responsibility that you have to kind of translate it, if you will, and disseminate it out. Let me just finish a minute. Even before I was on the Township Committee, one of the things that I liked to do, I would come to these meetings and I would, take in information and maybe it's just my nature, if you would, but I would be talking with people on the street. And, I'd hear somebody talking about something and I would kind of weigh in on it and I would explain it to them and people remark to me, wow, thanks for breaking it down for me like that. I didn't even know that, if you would. They appreciated being in the thing. And that wasn't because I was on the Township Committee, but just because I heard about things and I shared that information. So I guess I'm just trying to amplify her point in that, while you're not on the Township Committee, I say you metaphorically speaking, you and the group, and you're meeting to encourage the people who are coming there to not just, have that information to themselves, but again, to share it, if you would, out as you've heard this information tonight.
Well, I understand, and what I described about the initial, I won't call it a charter, but the formative concepts for this group really talked more about the understanding where there might be areas for improvement and not become an advocacy group. So there's a small area that's kind of gray that we don't quite understand yet, where if we're acting to promote information flow itself, we're not sure yet how to avoid that advocacy role.
Right.
Understand what I'm saying?
Oh, I do. Yeah.
So I was very careful to say to you that what we're about is understanding where the communication's defective.
The process. Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
And now that time is an issue, right? Because a grassroots effort, we did pretty well in 6 days, but can we do what you're saying in the here and now on this project? I'm not so sure. And I think the conversation crossed over, and I'm partly responsible in response to Ms. Laria's comments. The conversation crossed over from that process issue to the reality that this is on a tight time frame.
Right.
And that's the sense in which I brought up the notion that something proactive to inform the population in this case would be advisable.
I'm sorry.
Not setting aside any behavior on our parts that would be consistent with what we say is important. Yeah, we can go out and talk about it, but this little initiative is not going to go out and raise all sorts of issues around what's right and wrong about the post office plan, or, you know, we might go so far as to do what we're asking the township to help us do.
Mhm.
But frankly, I'm not sure that it can be pulled together that quickly.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's an ongoing effort. Now, I don't want to drag out the remarks, but it is something that I had an observation about. Like I said, we've started this initiative, and there'll be others as well. It's something we constantly communicate with. Ms. Ross spoke earlier about how the fact that she looks at the news record, if you would. I'm not sure if we could encapsulate everything that was discussed tonight in a news record article, and it would take over the whole issue. You know, there's Facebook, Twitter, people in person, videos. I mean, you can do any host of different things. But one of the things we're trying to do is, and that's why I turned the question back around when I was speaking to Ms. Ross, is, well, how would you like to? How do you get the information? And so by informing us about that, that's going to help to do some of the things you mentioned in terms of how do we communicate the information out better. So improving the process, we definitely need to do, but I guess we're looking for your help as well.
Absolutely. And that concept of what do you do online that lasts, in other words, that can track an issue as opposed to just respond.
Yeah, I took a note on that, yeah.
Respond to the soundbite from last night's meeting that everyone's yelling about. That's the challenge, I think.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, we're going to close the hearing and, or close that section. Just want to go over, Mr. Greigel, just to be clear, we're going to include all the comments from the planning board?
Yes.
Okay. We're going to take a look at this language from our attorney around the King Supermarket expressing an interest. And then also you're going to look at this subdivision issue?
Yes.
And the whole question of 40 years versus 30 years.
I'll reach out to Redevelopment Council to discuss that issue.
Okay.
And the other issues he raised as well.
And then the one issue on Mr. Desiderio raised with adding local to the affordable housing?
Yeah, no problem.
Okay. I think that's everything. Okay, so you'll prepare this and work with Mr. Desiderio. We have to prepare an ordinance for the introduction on the 18th. Okay?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks for coming after your other meeting.
No problem.
All right, our next discussion item is Communications Committee.
That would be me. Yes, thank you, Mayor. The Communications Committee met on the 28th of May, and we discussed two topics. I'm going to go over the first one now, and that's going to be our recommendation to implement a product by a vendor called Civic Plus called Go Citizen Pro, which will be a mobile application for the township. Essentially, again, we're looking for ways to facilitate the dissemination of information with residents in the community, additional ways to do that. In this case here, we're talking about the information that we have on the website. And what we are looking to do with this initiative is to actually have this vendor create a mobile application which residents will be able to use their cell phones, their smartphones, if you would, their Android devices and iPhones, and we'll actually be able to get, and this is more like day-to-day type of information. I mean, if they see a broken traffic light or graffiti or a pothole or something like that, they'll be able to report that information just as they can on the website, but they'll be able to do it using the mobile application. The information we disseminate on the website in terms of news flashes, again, they'd be able to see this information online. So it's essentially taking the information that is currently available on the website and pushing it out in a mobile application. This is something that, if you think back to Hurricane Sandy when the power was out, people could at least get their phones charged at the library, maybe for a little bit of time or whatever. And some people remarked that it would have been nice if they could have gotten some information using their cell phones. And here's an application which will actually facilitate that. There were 5 vendors that were considered for this initiative, and I want to commend our Assistant Township Administrator, Cesar Correa, for doing the research on this. And the vendor that was selected, Civic Plus, one of the reasons for selecting them is that they are, in fact, the same entity that does our website. So in terms of, again, leveraging that information, it becomes sort of a natural fit, if you would, vis-a-vis some of the other vendors that were being considered. Also, from a cost standpoint, this would be a one-time fee of $4,500 and an ongoing fee of $100 a month for the maintenance of this. And you know, in contrast, there were there was at least one offer which would have been up to $7,000 per year. Okay, so in terms of even the cost of the initiative, this was not the highest cost option either. So again, for all those reasons, we are recommending that we go forward with this initiative to use Civic Plus to actually develop that information. So I'd like to see if that's the wish of the Township Committee to pursue this option, and do we have to have a vote on it? How does it work?
Do that, because you're looking
Okay.
to get a bid from them, or have you gotten?
No, we have.
No, we've
we
already
have it.
gotten.
Okay, so
Yeah. We have 5 vendors, actually.
Yeah.
what's the motion, to accept it?
Yes.
Okay, so I'd like to make a motion that we accept the bid from Civic Plus to develop a mobile application for the township for a fee of $4,500. So it's a one-time cost and an ongoing fee of $100 per year for maintenance.
I'll
Per
second.
year or a month?
Per month, pardon. So, it's, yes, I'm sorry.
Second.
Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mr. Brownlee?
Yes.
Mrs. Larrier?
Yes.
Ms. Leventhal?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes,
Passes.
thank you. Good job on that. And then you have another one?
Yes, at the same meeting, it was an offer made to us by a company called CGI Communications, and you know, it was interesting upon reading this. This seemed like one of those too good to be true types of things, and so we discussed this. What they've approached us with is the fact that they've entered into a partnership with the U.S. Conference of Mayors and the National League of Cities to provide communities a marketing tool, if you will, to basically highlight and showcase the best things about them. And so what this would actually entail is a no-cost community showcase program which will be featured on the township's official website. If people want to see an example of what this would look like, you can go to http://amsterdamny.gov, and you'll see on their website an example of this type of video. Essentially what they're offering to us is that they will come to here, they will provide professional videographers, I think that's the term, video editing capability, professional voiceovers, and they will assemble this all together. They would like to have an introductory narrative from the mayor, if you would, welcome to Maplewood, if you will. They will work with us to generate the content for the site. What is it that we would like to highlight about our municipality to the outside world for people who are considering possibly moving here? They will professionally produce that, and it will go onto the website. Again, there is no fee for this service. I guess one of the ways in which they would recoup some of their investment is that they will also allow businesses to place banners on the website. And the video itself would also include, they also provide 3 additional videos as well to showcase various aspects of our community. So that's another option as well. And additionally, they'll also provide links to not-for-profit organizations from this sort of video portal. So what you'll essentially see is on our website, there'll be a place where there's a video, and if people click on it, there's some professional narration, a video saying, "Welcome to Maplewood," and it's a great place to be, and kind of walk through that type of scenario. So it's a positive thing. We saw it as an opportunity for us to showcase ourselves at our best, and we are recommending that the Township accept this generous offer from this organization to put this together. Ms. Larrier?
It's also noted that our assistant administrator did some background work on this, and there are other townships. I'm sorry, there's other townships who have done this. I think you said Montville. Montville has done it. They also have a similar government to ours. I think
That's scary.
I think to avoid they worked it out so that with turnover in mayor, possibly, that we can work it so that we don't get stale information. So it sounds like a really good proposal. And I'm using stale information because that's what...
Terminology, yes. Yes.
A question about these business banners. Are they Maplewood businesses?
Yeah, they're offering it to Maplewood businesses, and they would be the ones going out and soliciting. And I asked them, well, you know, which businesses, if you will, and they'll basically be the ones soliciting that from our local businesses. Yes.
They will.
Yes.
Soliciting. If they don't get enough Maplewood, do we land up with Target on there? Or
I didn't hear that. Mr. Correa's nodding, shaking his head no.
It would just be businesses in the township of Maplewood.
It would just be
It
businesses.
would be limited to. That's wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this sounds good to me.
So again, we'd like a motion if...
So I'd like to make a motion that we accept this offer from CGI Communications to make, to basically include this in their community video showcase program and to begin the work of putting together the video content for placement on our website.
Second.
Any discussion? Call the roll.
Mr. Browley?
Yes.
Mrs. Larrier?
Yes.
Ms. Leventhal?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next item is the Women's Club, 60 Woodland Road.
Yes, 60 Woodland Road. Terminology.
At the last Township Committee meeting, we instructed Mr. Manning to move forward in negotiating an interim contract for operating the facility with the HK Fund. And we also instructed you to have our staff begin some of the repairs. And you are in the process of negotiating with the HK Fund?
That is correct.
And also that our engineer has identified some of the work that's to be done and is soliciting bids for some of the other work, correct?
Soliciting the bids for that work, and once that's done, we'll look at expanding into other areas.
And we're doing the electrical upgrade first?
It's electric upgrade would not be the appropriate word, but making it functional as it is now, as it currently is.
So functionalizing the electric.
Yes, that's right.
And then we're going out to get estimates on mold remediation and asbestos.
Yes, and we are going to be looking at repairs to the auditorium level, the lower level doors.
To make them
Secure.
functional and
Yeah.
secure. And handicap accessible?
Not at this particular point in time.
We, on the operational aspects, we are talking with HK Fund about doing activities there that would include concerts and fundraising activities, municipal functions, being available for private function rentals, education, recreational activities. And those are all within the scope of work that you're talking about, correct?
That is correct.
And we're hoping to have that concluded either at the next meeting or the meeting after that of the Township
yes.
Committee? Okay. One item that we talked about is that there needs to be inclusion of this facility as a town facility on the list of facilities that we allow alcohol to be consumed.
Yes.
That's correct, because right now, as a town facility, alcohol cannot be consumed there, and many activities that happen at the Women's Club have alcohol in there. So let's see where we stand as the Township Committee. Is there anyone who would like to make a motion to include that on our list of facilities that will permit alcohol to be consumed?
I'll move that we do that,
Subject to regulations that we develop
that we develop
Right.
as particular
for this building.
for this, right.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mr. Brownlee?
Yes.
Mrs. Laria?
Yes.
Mrs. Leventhal?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes.
Passes.
So you'll memorialize that and,
Well, I don't know that I can. I mean, I can't change the ordinance.
Oh,
My understanding was that that was to give Mr. Manning some direction.
that's
in
correct.
terms of the
That's correct. And then it has to go, the
negotiation.
ordinance has to be changed, right? Okay, yeah. That's right. Sorry about that. And then we have a task force meeting that we mentioned briefly before, and Ms. Leventhal, if you could mention that, what we're doing? What
Yes.
the task force is doing
What
with that?
the task force has set aside Tuesday, June 11th, from 4 to 8 p.m. at the Bergdorf Center to have a session for public input on the uses for 60 Woodland, the former women's club. At that time, our engineer will be present, some of us will be, other department heads, and maybe Mr. Manning, for, parts of the 4-hour stretch. What we will have are plans for each of the levels, the auditorium, the main level, and the upper level. And we will have a listing of the it's like about 9 types of events or uses that the task force came up with as possibilities for the building. We would be interested in having people just walk in whenever they have the time during this 4-hour window to talk with us and to let us know which of these uses appeal to them and what other ideas that come forth from the community of residents and businesses. It's not a meeting, it's not a presentation, it's open. And we are specifically looking for Maplewood's creativity in this new endeavor, and we will have available a FAQ handout, frequently asked questions, and we'll have some information about everything from square footage to our intent to find a not-for-profit partner to manage the building. That's the outline of the 4 hours.
Could we put, I'm realizing it's just next Tuesday, but could we put just like a flyer or something like that, or put some flyers in the 2 branches of the library? Just to, in case people come by or something like that, or just, it doesn't have to be like a zillion of them, but somehow just.
Yep, Sasa's gonna do it.
We'll put flyers in all of our public buildings, the community center, the libraries, here, wherever else we can think. And also, I wanted to comment that as the information is developed for the meeting, we'll be putting it online.
Okay.
So that people can see it.
Yeah, but if we can,
For the meet, yes.
what we have now, even in terms of like the format of the meeting and things like that, and it's after hours. I mean, I don't want it to be long.
That's,
but
okay,
but
for the handout.
Yeah, no, I'm saying whatever we put in these public places, just something to say, hey, it's this time, it's open.
Yes.
Right,
you know,
right,
that,
right.
We'll
something like
explain the format of the
that.
meeting.
Yeah, I mean, not a paragraph. but-
No.
Thank you for reminding me. There is a wealth of information. I really believe it's a lot of information on on the website. You go to the first page of the homepage, and on the left, there's pictures of the closing last week at 60 Woodland, the former women's club, and there you can click to a page that talks about this session and has included approximately 7 or 8 documents, some a little hard to get through, and some that will give you the kinds of information that people are asking about, like what has the task force come up with in terms of ideas. So,
just make sure that then the flyer at least has the URL for the
yeah.
website. That way people can go there for more information.
And patches, getting it out there, it's getting to be public.
Okay. The last item associated with 60 Woodland is the parking. We have, we want to do something through a resolution on an interim basis so that we can deal with the parking.
It's me.
And these are all monthly charges, so we can, what I would suggest is that we do this by resolution, implementing it right away, because we do have people parking, and there are some people who are interested in parking there overnight. Now, we do allow parking overnight, and we have had reserved commuter parking before at the former police station. So this is what I would propose, that we have a 24-hour parking space that can be reserved at $100 per month, an overnight parking fee of $50 per month, and as we did before, a commuter parking fee, reserved spot for $60 per month. And that these spaces would be in the flag portion, which would be the lower left portion of the parking lot, and then we would leave roughly 30 spots as 2-hour spots. Could we get a motion to that?
Moved.
Second?
Discussion, questions? Mr. Desert, you have it.
I do. I have questions.
Yes.
24-hour reserve parking, is there going to be a maximum number?
Can you?
No. If we get a lot, then we'll shrink some of the 2 hours, but
Well,
there's 18 possibilities, 18 spots for all of these.
I guess my concern is that if you sell more than, too many.
So the combination of what I said, the overnights can park anywhere, because that's not an issue. These would be for the commuters, and the 24-hour would be a total of 18. Can't sell more than 18.
18 total.
18 total.
Okay, so that's the.
Except the overnights, you could sell an unlimited number.
The non-reserved.
Right.
You could sell, okay.
Just like we have right now. Or we could designate how many, because we do that in public lots now, right? We designate a portion.
Yes.
So you can do 18, any combination of 18, which would be the 24-hour parking spaces and the reserved commuter spaces. Once we get to 18, we stop.
Okay.
And then the non-reserved overnight spaces, usually we pick a percentage, but I don't think we should pick a percentage of 31. I think we should limit it to 10.
And we have
Start.
10 in the adjacent lot on Highland.
Yeah.
So.
Right.
Let's
10,
see.
let's keep it 10 and 10.
And I'm not sure that we even sold all 10,
Right.
so.
Well, let's,
Yeah.
we might.
I'm just concerned, okay.
Yeah, you're concerned about oversubscribing to the
Yes.
reserve. So if we
Right.
keep it at 18, that keeps it clear there. And the rest could be 2-hour.
And and the rest will be 2 hours.
Right.
And Mr. Manning or Mr. Burbank will know which of the spaces are going to be marked.
Well, I've given him.
We'll work it with the,
Yeah.
we'll work it out with Mr. Burbank, the engineer, and myself will come up with that.
Okay.
Understood.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Call the roll.
Mr. Bradley?
Yes.
Mrs. Larrier?
Yes.
Ms. Leventhal? Yes. Mayor DeLuca?
Yes. Okay.
Passes.
Next up is the consent agenda with the removal of 11113. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mr. Bradley?
Yes.
Mrs. Larrier?
Yes.
Ms. Leventhal?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes.
Passes.
Okay, this is our last public comment period. Is there anyone who wants to address the Township Committee?
Good evening. My name is John Harvey, and I live at 8 Inwood Place in Maplewood. Just a couple of observations and a couple of questions. First of all, from a process perspective at the meeting, confusing to me why we vote on certain issues before we provide public opinion. And Marlon, I'm speaking specifically about the app and the marketing. You know, and the questions I would have if I had some insight is, you know, regardless of the level of investment, this is an investment of tax money. And I guess my question to you is, how will you determine if the app is successful? And my second question is, would it be wiser to go out and, you know, as Dave was saying, engage the community to find out, you know, pressure test whether it's an app that's going to be used, because there are so many different apps out there today.
Do I answer back?
Why don't you finish your, this is your chance to ask comment.
Yeah, I got a couple of points. I'll give you
go ahead, give us your comments.
I have the same feeling about the video. You know, I know it's a deal that's too good to be true. You know, I question whether the town council should be getting into marketing, or is this something that should be deferred to realtors, you know, people that know the Community Village Alliance, Springfield Avenue Partnership. And again, there is an opportunity cost here. I mean, there's no financial cost. So how do we know if that's successful? You know, as we make these little investments, are we really, you know, challenging ourselves to say this is the investment we're making, this is what success looks like, and then hold ourselves accountable for whatever that success is. Similar process insight on the Women's Club. You know, I've been pretty vocal about why we buy things when we don't know what's going to happen. I don't understand why we make a vote on the alcohol allowance at the Women's Club when we're days away, Kathy, from you having an open house on what the possible use of it is. And wouldn't it be wiser to find out what the possible use of it is before we get into an issue whether we should serve alcohol at that particular venue? And frankly, for me personally, it makes me a little skeptical of, you know, what's happening and where the deal is, because why do we need alcohol if it's going to be strictly a community event? So that's a process check. And Vic, I'm going to keep asking you the question, is at what point are we going to know the tax impact of the net tax impact of the Women's Club deal? My suggestion is if it's a year away, let us know what it is now, and then just keep tallying it as we go forward so that residents understand not just these numbers of $1.004 million, but also where it's going to hurt us from impact from a tax incentive. But it's not necessarily hurt. If there's incredible value in it, obviously it's money well spent. And that's it.
Thank you. I'm not prepared to answer any questions now. Riley, you want to say anything?
Question, I'd ask another representative, Kathleen, maybe, do you have an idea of when we'll know the tax impact of the Women's Club? Marlon?
No, but I'm going to answer your other question.
India?
Okay. I'm sorry. The question about the mobile app for the township, how will we know if it's successful? The only answer I can give you on that is really a technical one, and that is whether or not the information that is displayed on the mobile app is in fact accurately displaying the information that's on the website, because that's the sole function of the mobile app. In terms of the cost, to your point, it is spending taxpayer money, $4,500. In terms of soliciting public input before making the expenditure, point well taken. There is obviously at some point some sort of a subjective decision-making process that takes place in terms of where to, in a sense, draw the line. I mentioned, for example, this is something I kind of found kind of interesting when I got onto the Township Committee, was the fact that we have a consent agenda, for example, consent agenda, which if you look at tonight's consent agenda, for example, it has, I'm going to add up here, probably about 16 different items on it, if you would. And clearly, we didn't seek public input before just passing the consent agenda. So we spent far more, I'm sure, in terms of what we just authorized in the consent agenda, you know, just like that, far in excess of what we did in terms of, you know, the mobile app. And while it may, you know, ooh, this is like something we spoke of, and it seems like something that, why didn't we get public input about it? You know, you could equally ask that same question about any of these items on the consent agenda as well. So, and certainly we're not going to, for all 16 of these items, seek the public input, should we close this, should we not, or whatever. At some point, it's subjective to your point, but at some point we kind of need to draw the line on that. And
I'm
and
not
so it's
talking in general, I'm talking even at the meeting tonight, putting the public, hearing that, and then voting on it after you get the public input, just at the meeting. I'm not talking about in general. And I guess the one question I have, and I think you had some help with the app, I mean, the measure, and I'm not, but the measure for apps, I understand, is number of hits, right? So if you have 10,000 people who have iPhones in Maplewood, you know, that would be a reasonable measure of success, is how many people have, because that will test if the information you're putting out there is relevant to the people who are using the app.
that's a
Way to measure your success, and I guess.
Well, you know, frankly, we could even have a discussion about that, because that's a quantitative measure, but one could also there's a qualitative measure as well. How easy is the app to use? I do system development, so I can certainly attest to those types of things as well. So in some cases, it's not necessarily going to be a sheer quantitative measure. And I just going to give, you know, kind of a purely hypothetical example. If there's something somewhere where somebody sees something and they're able to report, and that's just one person is able to report something that for whatever reason they might not have been able to, emergency situation, and it's one, you know, hey, that's not 10,000, but you know what, it helped that one person. And I realize that's maybe kind of a, you know, queasy type of a justification, but you know, sometimes it's just not, you know, 2 + 2 = 4.
I just think on apps, and I just think the qualitative aspect does, over time, and for the masses, result in a quantitative magnet by the app of people to use it. If nobody uses it, if one person uses it saves their life, it's money well spent. If nobody uses it, then I question whether it's a good investment.
No,
and I'm just saying, think about that up front.
No, fair enough. We do also, just as an aside, and Mr. Correa and Mr. Manning help out, we actually do get monthly statistics on the website itself. And we actually do analyze those results, and we look to see maybe, you know, in terms of sort of the path through the website, you know, maybe making tweaks to the way it's laid out, if you would. Even that's kind of a challenging thing, because maybe people have gotten used to navigating through the website in a particular way, and if you make changes to that, what's the impact of that? Maybe we should leave it the way it was before, because some people are used to that. You know, it's a bit of an art and a bit of a science. Hopefully I'm not sounding like I'm lecturing, because that's not my intent. Yeah, but you can kind of see. Yeah. So,
I understand.
So there's things like that we, you know, we just kind of have to walk through it, and you know, we try to do the best we can.
Okay. And just in closing, I mean, I'm just incredibly disappointed that the town council can't give us an idea of a date when we will know the tax impact, even on the 1.004 million. So that's a disappointment.
When we sell the bond.
Have that tax
When we sell the bond.
Right.
What, you want to repeat that?
When we
sell
sell the bond
to see what
to
the
cover
interest
the
rate is.
But
cost.
that's all I'm asking for. I'm not asking for the number.
Here, we
Yes,
don't
you
know
were.
when we're going to sell the bond, but that's when you'll know.
You were asking for the number. You were asking for the number. You were asking for the number.
When we would have the number.
Okay. Well, when we have it together, we will make it public when we have it together. And just so there's clarity about the liquor, so there's, you know,
Clarity about what?
we did not.
I didn't hear clarity about what?
At the liquor.
Okay.
Liquor at the women's club. We did not approve that. That can only be approved through a resolution. What we approved, an ordinance. I'm sorry. What we approved is to give Mr. Manning the discretion in the negotiations with the HK fund to talk about this as a possibility, indicating the willingness of the township committee to move on that. So, and by the way, the building now has had events where liquor has been served, so nothing would be changed. We're not talking about creating a facility there.
There's a number of events with liquor involved that you're going to get some of the residual issues related to that. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. We're going to close the public comment period. We have no reports from departments. Administrative reports, Mr. Manning?
Yes, I have 4 items, and the first item is I sent you a copy of Assembly Bill 3739 and Senate Bill 2526, which requires training equipment, indemnity, and reimbursement for certain municipal employees for moving and securing detached above-ground distribution lines, impeding vehicular traffic during lengthy power outages. And I would like to have support so that we could develop, if you do a motion, we'll develop a resolution that will go to our legislative leaders supporting that. That is something that came out of Sandy, and I know our Public Works had wanted, and we had talked about. So,
Any comments?
Question, actually, because this would come from the state, there wouldn't be union issues.
No, there would be union issues.
There would be.
There are issues with the unions, the electrical workers' unions, that they're not in favor of this.
Is that because presumably it means that our people can do some work and they would not be called?
Correct. But this is only in a
in an
emergency
emergency
situation.
We were held up for days, not
Yes.
able to open up streets because wires were down, and we were not able to address them. And we'd like the ability to do that.
It defines what a major emergency event is.
Yeah, it's not just your regular storm. So. Anyone supportive of it?
I am.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I am too.
We got a motion to endorse the bill?
I would make a motion that we endorse this and wholeheartedly support it.
Second.
Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mr. Brownlee?
Yes.
Mrs. Laria?
Yes.
Ms. Leventhal?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes.
Passes.
Thank you. Thank you all. The second one is I want to remind everyone that the farmers market is opening this coming Monday, June the 10th. And my assistant, Caesar Correa, is the farmer market manager. And in addition to the two farmers that we always get, and Hoboken Farms, which is always there, he has secured a pickle and olive stand, a fresh vegetable juice vendor, and a food truck that will sell Cambodian food. Yes.
Are you drooling?
No, but I am anxious to try that Cambodian food. Yes.
Who is the fresh vegetable juice vendor?
Green?
Yes.
Okay, there we go. I don't know. So to the public, it's the market's every Monday from 2 to 7 on Springfield Avenue at Indiana Street. I wanted to point out that our website, maplewoodnj.org, is your source for fact-based information. People want to know where to go to look for things. Well, that's one of the ones, and one of your sources, and should be a main source, and that you should visit it frequently to find out what local government actions have been taken, as well as look at our calendar of events. Our website, according to this month's New Jersey League of Municipalities, ranked 38th out of 540 municipal websites in 2012, and that is prior to the updates and the upgrading that my assistant has made. So we are in the top 10% of municipal websites according to a Monmouth University poll. For example, our sister town, South Orange, ranked 209. So just to kind of give you an idea that we work very hard to keep that going. And the last one is...
And what is that website address? What is that website address? One more time?
It's maplewoodnj.org.
I've seen maplewood.nj.org also.
It's maplewoodnj.org.
Okay.
There are several ways that people
Yeah,
get to it
that's right.
because it redirects them.
Okay. South Orange is in the process of updating theirs. They hopefully will take some.
Wow, yeah, absolutely. And the last thing is I'm reporting for the clerk on the special election. We have a writ of election, and it basically is saying that the nomination of political party candidates to fill the vacancy of the late Senator Lautenberg will, see this over here, shall be made in the manner provided by law, the primary on August 13th, 2013, 70 days after that, and 64 days, 76 days after the issuance of this writ. And after the issuance, and 64 days before the October 16th, 2013 special general election. So those two dates again, August 13th, 2013, for the primary, and October the 16th, 2013 for the special general election.
What's very important for people to realize is that October 16th is a Wednesday, and we do not vote on Wednesdays in this state. And so there are going to be many people confused, so we're going to have to do the best we can in informing them that this special election will be on a Wednesday, October 16th.
We have costs for this. Are those costs reimbursed when I hear 24,000?
From the
24 million?
county.
Yeah.
Yes.
It is, okay, thank you.
Anything else from Mr. Manning? Mr. Desiderio? No report. Ms. Smith, any report?
No report.
Everybody wants to go home. Reports from elected officials. Mr. Brownlee?
I have no report, Mayor.
Mrs. Larrier?
I have 27 items.
Great. Well, you better speak into the microphone.
No report.
Okay, Ms. Leventhal?
Yes, I attended on Saturday the awarding of the Scouts, Boy Scouts of America, Troop 5, awarded Eagle Scout status to 7 of their members, teens and young adults. And had the opportunity to, we did present them with proclamations, with certificates, and I had the opportunity to read what these young men have accomplished in the last few months. And they've given so much to their community in terms of their project, but their leadership was outstanding, and they were able to, in different situations, raise money, get teams of other young people working with them. So it was just, I had never been at such a, I've been to some other Boy Scout events, but this was so rich, so exciting. I appreciate being able to stand in for the mayor, who able to be there. I also attended the YouthNet Department of Recreation and Village and the Maplewood Alliance event, which was 2 hours of community music from youth at the gazebo at, near the Hilton Library. Unfortunately, I was there before the kids came out. Apparently 6 o'clock's a little too early for teenagers, or so it seemed. But I understand that it filled up, and it was a very good collaboration, I think, and we need some tweaking maybe, but it's a good thing to have gotten off the ground.
I was there at 8 o'clock, and there were kids there.
Yeah.
There were kids still there, so it was good, and I got to talk to some of the kids, and they really enjoyed the ability to do this. Just quick 3 items. Mr. Manning and I met with a new neighborhood association, the Valley Street Neighborhood Association, and this group includes people who live on Valley, people who live just off of Valley, and those who are concerned about Valley. And we had a good meeting. We talked about different issues. We will be issuing a story for Patch at some point. But one important thing is that they've sent us a letter, I got it yesterday, I believe it is, that they're asking that Valley Street speed limit be reduced from 35 to 25. Now, Valley Street is a county road. What I'd like to do is I'm going to bring this to the Planning and Engineering Committee and get Mr. Malavasi's input on how we might prepare for a request to the county. I would assume that we would want to get some counter data by putting the counter across the road and getting that information on speeds and things like that. So in South Orange, the speed limit is 25 miles, and then it picks up again near Columbia High School to 35. So, and then there's other concerns they have around code enforcement, and we will be pursuing those. Police enforcement will be talking both at Planning and Engineering and at the Public Safety meeting tomorrow. I have office hours this Tuesday coming up from 6 to 7, I'm sorry, from 7 to 8. So I will be at the Women's Club thing from 4 to 7 or so. And then June 15th, Saturday, is the next talk to the Township Committee. Unfortunately, I will not be around to participate. But I believe it's at the Walgreens.
I was trying to look it up, and I didn't see it.
I'll send it out. I have it in my book, and I don't have my book with me.
I was looking up for it, I didn't see it.
Is there anything else? We get a motion to adjourn?
So moved. So moved.
Second.
All right. All in favor? I will
Aye.
see you again June 18th. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, no, that's quite all right. When there's a gap, there's so much space here. That's quite all right. I was not offended in the least. Thank you for coming, thank you for hanging in there.
There's going to be, I have to look.
Good night, Roger.
Someone sent it. So let's just use rough numbers. It'll be about
Oh, my best.
31 two-hour spots. I'll give you the exact numbers. 31 two-hour spots, 18 that we're going to look for the reserves, and then there's 4 that are handicap and building spots. There's a total of 53 altogether. That we have, that we've so far identified.
I'll get you those names tomorrow.
Anyway.
I can't hear what they say.
Correct, right. Correct. And overnight is 50. These are all fees that we've used before. Okay?